Okay, you all set? 7 o'clock. You good?
Yep.
We just need a motion to reconvene.
Motion to reconvene.
Second?
Okay, good evening. We have a motion to second reconvene. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's move on to number 2. It's public forum. Pursuant to Rule 25 of the Rules of the Council, citizens may address the town on one subject only, said subject of substantive town business, neither discussed during the regular meeting nor related to personnel or job performance. Citizens may speak for no longer than 5 minutes and must submit a public participation form to the council clerk prior to the start of the meeting. All items discussed during this session will not be voted upon, and we do have one. Thomas O'Neill. Just come on up and state your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is Thomas O'Neill, and my address is 24 Squantum Drive in Middletown.
Okay?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity of being able to address the council. And I was assigned to St. Lucy's Parish as an assistant pastor in 1968 to 1973, and I'm presently here in semi-retirement, still helping out at St. Lucy's a little. And my purpose in speaking to you is to talk about cycling, pedestrian situations, and that kind of thing in Middletown, and offer a couple of suggestions. I understand that the town is in the process of acquiring from the U.S. Navy land that is on the west side of the island, north of Green Lane. And my purpose in speaking to you here today is to offer suggestions on how to put together, or how one might put together pathways that could make getting to Green Lane without an automobile less difficult and less stressful, even from the east side of the island. East and West Main Road divide this town in 3 sections, and these 2 roads have heavy, fast, noisy, and sometimes dangerous traffic, with narrow and sometimes no sidewalks to boot. If a multi-use pathway could be built that would connect the island a little better from the east side of the island over to Green Lane, and then, which has been upgraded, ultimately to the property to be acquired on the west, I think the quality of life in the town would be much better. And I suggest a couple of ideas for discussion. One is that an easement on the east side of East Main Road from Turner Road to Mitchell's Lane would make it easier to get up and down that section. Turner Road is a 25-mile-an-hour road, and I believe Mitchell's Lane is too, or it's a slower road. Also, partway down East Main, there is a light at Oliphant. People could get down Oliphant, which is a slower, less dangerous road than East Main or West Main. And from there, one other thought that crosses my mind is at Jepson, partway down Jepson, is the substation, National Grid substation. And I've looked across that land to the side of the substation, and you can see the pasture farm development on the other side. I've also gone over to Pasture Farm Road and looked out in the field, and you can see the power lines. And if some kind of an easement could be acquired that would be aligned with the power lines in that direction, there's quite a bit of room over there. I realize there's issues with DEM and so forth, possibly, I don't know. But at least that might be explored as well. And those will be 2 possible ways to get in a safer manner from the east side of East Main Road, or the east side of Middletown, over to Green Lane, and ultimately to the property to be acquired. These are just a couple of my suggestions, and I'd be happy to work with a person or group of persons, because together other ideas would probably percolate, and that would be productive as I see it. In addition to that, I've had some conversations with Senator Mr. Palmer. And he said that he would work for funding for such an effort at the pleasure of the Middletown Town Council. And I'd also like to thank a couple of people, Councilman Welch and Councilman Flynn, for being supportive of this kind of effort to make the island, the town better and more, the quality of life better for people in bicycles, on foot, and not in automobiles to get from one part of the island to the other. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Brown and Mr. Walensky, because they have been supportive in my conversations with them as well. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to address you, and I would like to follow up on this conversation that I'm giving to you now with somebody in the town council, or the town hall, some official there. So that's what I would like to do subsequent to this gathering. And thank you very much. I really appreciate this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean, is this something that the Open Space and Fields Committee should maybe take a look at?
That's one group we could work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have, Mr. O'Neill, we have an Open Space and Fields Committee, and they look at these kind of projects. If you could get with them, who's Tom is? Tom's the council rep for the Open Space and Fields Committee. I think certainly a discussion can't hurt, and see where it goes. I think it's a great idea, and I think there's even more possibilities to connect beyond Turner Road, even further east. Okay? And thank you for your ideas and your time, okay? Appreciate you coming forward, sir. Excellent. Okay. So we're gonna forward this to the Open Space and Fields Committee?
I got it.
Okay,
And
excellent.
just one note that there is money in the tip for bike lanes within the town of Middletown, and that was, progress on that was preempted by COVID, but in talking with Father Tom, and I think his willingness to, sort of be a champion of this conversation with open space, now would be a time to pick that up with the planning department, the Open Space Committee, and other interested people.
Sure, and I'm sure there's probably all kinds of grants too, I would think.
There is.
That are out there that we could apply for potentially too, once we have a plan, okay? Thank you for coming forward. Appreciate it. Okay. Let's move on to the consent calendar.
Motion to approve the consent number 3 and number 6 of the consent calendar.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to, what about number 7?
Well, I would have had to turn the page. And 7.
Second?
Okay. Okay. Motion to approve the consent calendar minus items number 4 and 5. All in favor? Aye. Okay, number 4, approval of minutes, reference to regular meeting August 2nd, 2021. Motion approved.
Motion approved minute.
Oh, you want to continue 'em?
No?
Okay. That's correct. Go ahead.
So the minutes for the August 2nd meeting, I thought it prudent to add on item number 18, which was the full build-out study, when Mr. Cabral agreed to expedite item number 3 of the high-priority groundwater items to evaluate the minimum lot sizes for homes with wells, including cluster developments, to be completed in 9 to 12 months instead of 18 to 36. I think that's an important data point as applications are submitted, and I think it should be reflected in the minutes if
Okay.
the council agrees.
Excellent. We did, because that was the discussion. Okay? Anybody have any discussion about that? Wendy, you got that?
Are you going to make a motion to add what she just said?
Yep. Yep. So moved.
Second?
Yep. We have a motion and a second.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Number 5, approval of minutes in reference to special meeting August 6, 20...
Can we approve the minutes as amended
We can.
for number 4?
Thank you. Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Wendy. Number
Mr.
5,
President, I'm going to leave the chambers for this next vote because I was not in attendance at that meeting, and so I'm not going to vote.
She doesn't have to leave.
She has to take.
did you ask to pull it off, though? So, I mean,
Not
if-
vote.
what are we discussing?
We're not discussing. I wasn't at the
You
meeting,
just want
so
it
I'm
continued?
not voting. No, I don't want to continue it. I thought this was the new procedure when you don't vote. You have to leave chambers.
Okay, so she walks out and we approve.
That's right.
Okay.
And then you quit. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Approval of minutes in reference to special meeting, August 6, 2021.
Motion to approve said minutes.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve. Council Clerk, please note that Councilor Flynn has recused. We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Let's move on to licenses and permits. Number 8, special event permit from Lee Kermel, representing Rejects Brewing Company and Diego's, 116 to 124 Quinnick Avenue, for a fall festival, fall beer release, one food vendor, and live music to be held on Saturday, October 2nd, 2021, from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Motion to grant said special event permit.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Mrs. Flynn.
Yes, thank you. So I did have a couple of questions on this event.
Terry, can you just speak into the,
Yeah.
you're just muffled with the
Yeah,
mask a
I'm
little bit. Sorry.
So I did have a couple of questions on this event. I don't know if there's anyone here from the application, if that would be okay for me to ask them directly?
Absolutely.
Terrific. Hi, Lee, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? Lee Kermel, Rejects Beer.
Just your name and address for the record. I couldn't hear you.
Lee Kermel.
Hi, Lee.
I live in South Kingston, but Rejects is 124 Quidneck Avenue.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah, appreciate you taking the time to come this evening. Just a couple of questions, because I hadn't seen this type of event before. And so you are having, on the application, you say you're having one food vendor. I did not know if that was Diego's itself, or if you were having a food truck or a food cart.
So Diego's has its own food cart that will just be in the back with us.
Okay, great, thanks. Also, you are having live indoor music according to the application.
Correct.
So my question is, will that be amplified, and will the windows and doors be closed, which is typical?
Yes, we can absolutely keep the windows and doors closed.
Okay.
It's going to be 2 to 3 pieces, so it wouldn't be very loud.
Okay. Also, the valet parking, where are you parking the guests that are coming to the event? Where are you parking the cars?
Currently, we do valet between the 2 companies and buildings, and we just stack the cars in the parking lot as is, and the alley in between.
Okay. And on the application, you are requesting a 20 by 50 tent, but your map is showing a 20 by 40. So I didn't know which one was being used.
Yeah, I apologize.
No problem.
I wanted to overestimate because I didn't know when I was filling out the application. I believe it is 20 by 40. I just
Okay.
did request a confirmation from the owner of the tent, though, as well.
Okay, great. Tremendous. That covers all the questions that popped up to me when I looked at the application.
Thank you. Any councilors have any further questions? Council Logan?
Ma'am, what's the contingency for parking? I presume you're going to draw a good crowd. You guys have a good crowd down there on Fridays now. And you don't have a ton of parking. So what is the plan to overflow parking and get more pedestrian traffic?
Well, we do always have bike racks that we continuously use with, I think they're sponsored by Bike Newport. Overflow parking, at a certain point, we just have to stop allowing cars. And we do pack in a number of cars as it is. I think the max we've done is 100 cars in that small lot, and just finagle them as much as possible. So
I think
contingency, at a certain point, we would just have to turn people away, unfortunately.
Thank you, Chris. I think the concern is just the overflow parking potentially into the residential neighborhoods.
Right.
I think that's, I don't want to speak for him, but that's what I was
Yeah, no.
thinking as well. I think that's what Terry was probably going with the parking as well.
I understand.
How do you monitor that, Lee?
Well, we haven't actually had that problem as of yet. So
Okay.
I would imagine that at this point, we do have a number of our neighbors that walk down the hill anyway to join us. And I suppose we could send the valet up the streets to make sure that there are no issues. But if you would like a more formal plan for monitoring the side streets, it's kind of hard since we're not.
It is.
It would be,
We're just trying to
Yeah.
like preventative before anything happens and we get complaints. Not saying there would be,
no, I understand.
but you guys have been good business people so far, so, and we haven't had any issues that
Happy to
I'm
post
aware of,
signage
but,
about no parking on the side streets. If you would like, we can definitely do that and make sure that we all of our advertising would push Ubers, and we want to push that anyway.
Yes.
For an event like that.
Yeah.
But we're happy to put signage up if that is something that the council would like. We can.
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
The application, it says you're expecting 75 to 100 people based on your 2019 event. I know you didn't have one during COVID in 2020. So when I heard 100 cars, I'm kind of thinking that's probably going to cover it. So let's see what happens. I don't want to project.
Fair
And,
enough.
Yeah.
I will say I was down there for the first time in years, last 2 weeks ago, and it was excellent. Your staff was great, the food was
Wonderful.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
Okay.
Appreciate the feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve said license. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Good luck, Lee. Thank you. Okay, number 9, application for special event permit from East Bay Community Action Program for the Molar Express to be held on September 27th, 28th, 29th, 2021, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. to be held at Linden Park. The applicant respectfully requests all fees to be waived.
Motion to grant said special event permit.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Again, I don't know how many years in a row this has been, Wendy?
Can we add to waive all fees, please?
And to waive all fees.
Second?
Okay. And I think it's great that the people that maybe, young kids or families that, can't afford to go to the dentist, that they provide this for our community. So I think it's awesome, and I think certainly we'll all support this. So I have a motion to second to grant said special event permit and to waive all fees. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Thank you. Number 10, we're going to public hearings now. Number 10, public hearing's been advertised, application of Joe's Quick Marts, LLC, DBA is Joe's Quick Marts, 864 West Main Road, for additional hours of operation license for the 2020-2021 licensing year. This is new.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, is there anybody here that would like to speak on this item? Does any councils have any questions? Mrs. Flynn?
I did get some clarification on
Okay,
this
sure.
application, if you'd like me to share.
Go right ahead.
My question was, what's different? And essentially, the answer is nothing.
Nothing.
There's a new owner, if you might remember from
Yep.
our last meeting. So this is essentially administrative, and the hours will not change. They'll
Yep.
be what they've always been.
Okay, excellent. Any further discussion? Any last chance, anybody in the public? No? Okay.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
We have a motion to second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion to grant said license.
Second?
We have a motion to second to grant said license. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Number 11, public hearing's been advertised. Public hearing remains open. In ordinance of the Town of Middletown, this is the second reading. An ordinance and amendment to the Town Code of the Town of Middletown, Title 15 Land Use, Chapter 152 Zoning Code, is amended by adding a new section 727 marijuana-related uses. The planning board recommendation is on file. So the public hearing has remained open from the last time. Is there anybody, we do have several folks that would like to speak on this. Tom, if you want to go in order of, this is the order here?
Yeah, but
Helen should be one to speak first.
Okay. So let's have Helen first. Helen, I'm not going to attempt the last name, Helen? Sawinski? There we go, excellent. Okay, just your name and address for the record, please.
Helen Sawinski, I'm at 24 Gunning Court. I am the co-chair of the Middletown Prevention Coalition, and I wanted to read for you our position statement on this.
Okay.
So the mission and goals of the Middletown Prevention Coalition are to reduce access and availability of substance to our Middletown youth. The research states that when a community reduces access, in turn, youth consumption rates are decreased, and Middletown has done this. The MPC has worked tirelessly to reduce the access of marijuana for Middletown youth through various interventions. Prevalence of youth marijuana use in Middletown in 2012 to 2013 was 8.3%. I'm sorry, it was 15%. The usage rates for 2020 to 2021 was 8.3%, which is a 6.7 decrease. which is really significant at this time when most communities nationally are seeing a rise in youth marijuana consumption rates impacted by legislation, marijuana decriminalization, and medical marijuana. The proposed marijuana land use zoning ordinance prohibits marijuana retail stores in all zoning districts, in addition to compassion centers and marijuana emporiums already delineated in the ordinance. The MPC endorses this section of the amendment as it aligns with the goals of the reduction of marijuana access and availability. This ordinance does, however, allow for the cultivation and testing of marijuana, and that is incongruent with MPC's goals and mission and the MPC's Town Department Performance Plan targeting health, wellness, and the prevention of youth substance use. Most importantly, this conveys a mixed message to our youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Okay. Susan Whitney? How are you?
Good.
Good. Just your name and address for the record, please.
Susan Whitney, 13 Stimson Street. I'm a Middletown parent with two teenage children. I'm against using Middletown land for cultivation and testing. I believe it would normalize use for our own kids, many of whom I know are already thinking it's safe. For our youth, whose brains are still developing, it is not safe. Please consider the negative impact on our youth and our community. Please do not pass this ordinance.
Thank you, Susan. Okay. Rachel Kerr? Hi, Rachel. Just your name and address for the record, okay?
Rachel Kerr, 13 Stimson Street.
Okay.
So, as you know, the distribution of marijuana would...
Rachel, can you just speak up a little bit, please?
Yeah.
A little louder.
So, the distribution of marijuana will increase, and I think that there are a lot of hidden side effects that come with this decision, and I don't think it's worth it. It will be more embedded into our culture. I think people will think it's normal and safe. And I also think that it's too close for comfort when it comes to teenagers. A lot of students already use marijuana as a coping mechanism, and they suffer because of it. They suffer in school and work, and they suffer with relationships, and they develop addictions. I think this decision is feeding into something negative, regardless of how it's distributed or regardless of how it's regulated. And you probably already know this, but marijuana affects the adolescent brain differently than it does to the adult. I'm mainly concerned about cognitive functions because marijuana affects how connections are made in the brain by interfering with neurotransmitters. And a student who uses will suffer. The negative effects include learning, attention, and memory, and these can be long-lasting, and they can also be permanent. And I think that childhood is a very important part of your life, and these decisions will affect the rest of your life. And I think it's important to reconsider this ordinance if you care about your kids. And I hope that the decision is made based off of beliefs and not profit.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate you coming forward. Okay.
Might even work.
Yeah, whatever. Janice Schwartz? Just your name and address for the record, Janice. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you. My name is Janice Schwartz. I reside at 74 Clegg Avenue in Tiverton, Rhode Island. However, I have a business on Aquidneck Island in Portsmouth, and I serve clients of Aquidneck Island. That would be Newport, Middletown, and Portsmouth. And I'm a therapist. I'm a licensed mental health clinician, and in the state of Rhode Island, and I'm also a licensed advanced chemical dependency professional in the state of Rhode Island. I've been working on the island I've been living in this area for 45 years. I lived in Middletown for 22. And I have great concern about the locations of this cultivation of marijuana. I think it sends the wrong message to youth and to many adults. I've worked with people addicted to marijuana. There was a time when we thought that marijuana was not physically addictive, and we know now that it is. We know that it affects the brain and the brain's development. We know that it affects youth, and it's the worst time for kids to be using marijuana as their brain develops up to age 25. So we know that it affects short-term memory. We know that it affects perception and judgment. We know that people who use it on a regular basis can come to the point where that's all they want to do. They lose interest in other things. I've treated people who've had that issue. And what I would say is that when we look at cultivating it behind the YMCA, where there's so many people who come to swim and do positive, healthy things, we're sending a message that it's all okay. And there's a myth in the land that it is okay. And I can tell you that it's not. And I think we're going to reap what we sow. I think cultivation around a mental health center where some folks would not benefit at all from marijuana. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be able to access it, but it does mean that we're sending the message that cultivating it in those areas is just fine. So thank you for allowing me to come up and speak tonight, and I hope that you will consider opposing this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
Jamie Lahane? How you doing?
Good
Good.
evening.
Welcome. Just your name and address to the record, sir.
Sure. I'm Jamie Lahane. I'm the CEO of Newport Mental Health, and we are located at 127 Johnny Cake Hill Road. Our main offices are in the Aquidneck Office Park. I first just want to applaud the town council and all you've done. One, to support the Middletown Prevention Council that really has, for years, I've been a member, my staff participate, that have helped keep kids off alcohol and drugs in our community. And that's very progressive, and your continued support is great. And you've also been very generous for years in supporting Newport Mental Health. So we see the impact of our youth in Middletown using alcohol and drugs, and especially marijuana, which is probably, after alcohol, the most prevalent drug that is being abused by our kids. So just as was said before, I just encourage you to be as restrictive as the law permits. If you have an opportunity to opt out in the next session, if there's changes to this bill, it does give a message. My staff see more than anybody here the impacts of marijuana on our children and youth, from everything from their school performance, their motivation. It adds to depression, anxiety, and I even have a recent case where it's been the trigger of a young adult having a psychotic disorder. And when they don't use the marijuana, they don't have that disorder. So anyways, the other question is the office park the best place to put the testing facilities? Again, what message did I give? Child and Family Services there, they mentioned the Y is located there. Our counseling outpatient services where we serve kids are there. This is probably at some financial potential harm to my facility because we need to build a new mental health center somewhere because we're not on a bus line. So we actually have our property there for sale. And I have a feeling that an offer we just got may be from somebody trying to invest in an operation like this. But despite that, I think continue to do the work you're doing and any opportunity you can to give the message that for 10% of the kids that try marijuana, they do have, a lot of kids try it, move on. But I know from what I see every day that those kids that it does impact, it can be severe. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
Lori?
Mr. President, fellow councilors, good evening. Lori Verderosa, Director of the Middletown Prevention Coalition, also a resident 426 Third Beach Road, and I also speak to you from a clinical perspective. I have a private practice where I'm a licensed chemical dependency professional and an advanced certified prevention specialist as well. So, contrary to federal law under which the use and sale of marijuana for any purpose is illegal, beginning in 2012, states began to legalize the commercial sale of marijuana. This has led to the rise of public health, safety, and social justice harms, including increased emergency room visits from today's high-potency marijuana, increased addiction rates, increased drug driving crashes, and many other unintended consequences for our youth. There is an abundance of scientific literature that links marijuana use to severe mental health outcomes, ranging from depression to psychosis, as Jamie just mentioned, as well as consequences for physical health and even negative outcomes for babies exposed in utero and inhibited cognitive development. To meet the market demands for higher potency products, today's marijuana has been modified to increase its potency. The weed of today is not the weed of yesteryear. Woodstock weed had only 1 to 3% THC content. THC is the psychoactive ingredient in pot. Today's studies show marijuana flower contain about 14 to 22% THC. Concentrates and edibles pack greater punch and contain about 55 to 60% THC on average, though some concentrates have tested 95 to 99% THC concentration. Middletown youth report using edibles and vaping THC concentrates since most methods are easier to hide and have no odor. Dr. Nora Volkow, director of the National Institute of Drug Abuse, states marijuana is an addictive drug. Brain scans of marijuana users show actual changes in the structure of the brain's reward center to be consistent with addiction. Marijuana impacts student achievement in the classroom by affecting memory, concentration, and one's ability to learn and be successful academically. NIDA reports that around 30% of those who begin using marijuana before the age of 18 are at 4 to 7 times more likely to develop a marijuana use disorder compared to those who start later. SAMHSA reports there was a 25% increase in cannabis order diagnoses among 12 to 17-year-olds in legal states. It goes without saying that marijuana is not the harmless drug that big marijuana would like for us to believe. The connections between marijuana use and consequences to youth mental health, physical health, and brain development are often not found in discussions about legalization, i.e. the sale of marijuana, the testing and cultivation of the product, and how these impact our youth need to be part of the dialogue. As stated earlier, Helen addressed in the position statement, we have reduced the youth consumption rates of marijuana by 6.7%. Additionally, the perception of harm, however, for marijuana has decreased by 1.8%, which is a risk factor for youth consumption rates. So we need to be careful of that risk factor. Within the scientific and medical community, there is vast agreement that youth should be protected. Social justice must be secured, roadways should be safe, and youth/adult mental health be of utmost importance. There is also agreement in the substance use and mental health prevention, treatment, and research arenas that youth should be protected. The protection of our youth is a targeted outcome of the coalition. This ordinance potentially increases access and availability by allowing for the testing and cultivation of legalized marijuana in Middletown. It provides an incongruent and mixed message to our youth and lends to the normalization of marijuana by our youth, a risk we cannot afford. I urge you to be mindful regarding the protection of our youth as you discuss this ordinance tonight, and be reminded of our successes in impacting marijuana youth consumption rates in Middletown, which we hope to continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Okay, Lisa Bradley? Hi, Lisa. Just your name and address for the record, please.
Lisa Bradley, 181 Bradford Avenue, Portsmouth. Thank you for this opportunity. I am the middle school prevention coordinator for Middletown Prevention Coalition and previously a health teacher for 15 years for middle and high school students. Two things I have learned about young people. The first, they are incredibly perceptive. And the second is that when given accurate information, opportunity, and skills, they will overwhelmingly make a healthy choice over an unhealthy one. We see that in national data and certainly in our Middletown data. What research shows us is that when young people perceive a substance to be harmful, they are much more likely to avoid that substance. Not all kids make the healthy choice, unfortunately, but a large majority do. We've seen that with the drop in tobacco use among teens over the years, and we're starting to see that with e-cigarettes and vaping, thankfully. Right now, youth are confused about the harms of marijuana, and rightfully so with the change in many state laws and with the focus on the growing lucrative industry. The hardest part about my job is going against societal and media messages that promote marijuana use. It's me versus Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart. I'm not winning. It's everywhere, and it's an uphill battle, but I'm willing to fight because of the harmful effects marijuana can have on a developing brain. I expect pro-marijuana messages from popular music, celebrities, and from industries who are out to make a buck. What's harder to accept and explain to youth is when our policymakers make decisions that are pro-marijuana. It's confusing and only makes our jobs to protect our youth tougher. I appreciate all the work that you've done in Middletown to curtail compassion centers and emporiums. I ask that you continue this work by not allowing retail sales, cultivation centers, and testing sites. This will send a clear message to our youth that marijuana use is harmful to them and that Middletown wants to lessen their access to it and make it a safer place for youth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lisa. Kelly? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Just your name and address for the record, please.
Kelly Simeone, 54 Atlantic Drive. So I sent an email earlier today. I just wanted to reiterate some of my thoughts for the record here tonight. I'm in opposition to this ordinance change that's before you. As written, I think it would undoubtedly increase youth access to marijuana in our town because it permits cultivation centers and testing providers. As former Middletown School Committee member, chairwoman, a volunteer with the Middletown Prevention Coalition, and now a mom of 2 young children in town, I'm concerned about the impact of this increased access on our youth. I've spent countless hours, as many of you have, working with volunteers across our town who have dedicated their time, their talents, and their money to reducing rates of youth substance abuse, with marijuana abuse being of a particular focus recently. The results have demonstrated the success of these efforts with a significant reduction in marijuana usage rates among Middletown youth. It would be disheartening, to put it mildly, to see the coordinated and impactful efforts of so many individuals and organizations in Middletown wasted so quickly. Please carefully think through the impact of this ordinance and the impact that it could have in its current form, and consider modifying it to prohibit cultivation centers and testing providers. They're not necessary in our town. Rejecting the ordinance in its current form and passing a more restrictive version will send a clear message to Middletown kids that the leaders in this community care about their future and will do what's necessary to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
Okay. Mr. Solicitor, I'm just going to ask you if you could just kind of give an overview of what's been presented to us, the ordinance as a draft, just an overview.
Sure.
For the folks maybe in here that haven't been here before, that was recommended by the planning board. And again, it's a recommendation.
And I'll try to be a little briefer than last time.
Thank you very much, but thorough.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so this draft ordinance was put together first by a subcommittee of the planning board and then reviewed by the full planning board. And it was really an effort that was put together in anticipation of recreational marijuana potentially being approved by the General Assembly at some point in the not-too-distant future. And the idea is for the town to have a framework to get ahead of that. And there are certain things right now that the town has a right under the current medical marijuana to control. certain things we can't control. We can't really have any say or to prohibit small-scale personal or cooperative cultivation of medical marijuana. And the idea here was, but some of the larger scale uses, whether it's compassion centers, larger scale cultivation, based on regulations that were enacted last year by the Department of Business Regulation, it appears that we have some ability to regulate this from a zoning standpoint, not licensing or anything. That's going to be done at the state level, but to say if these things are allowed, this is where and only where they would be permitted. And so the planning board looked at this really from that perspective, from a zoning perspective, because that looks like the only place that we had the ability to regulate. And they looked first at the compassion centers and retail outlets, looked at the experience of communities in Massachusetts where these retail outlets were opened up, saw all the problems, not only with just youth access, but with noise, with traffic, et cetera, and determined that that was not an appropriate use and put a prohibition in there. Then took a look at the small-scale cultivation, which frankly we don't have really any ability to regulate, and then focused on the other uses, which were larger-scale cultivation and testing. And I think the planning board looked at that in two ways. Number one, those uses did not appear to be one where you would potentially be increasing the accessibility of marijuana to youth. And also, they were less intense uses in terms of impact on abutting properties, in terms of traffic and other things, a small lab, et cetera. They looked at the possibility of just prohibiting those, but one of the concerns was, you know, if this passes, if we have a right to opt out, one of the very real possibilities is that opt-out will only be by referendum. We'll have to have a townwide referendum on each and every one of these uses to determine whether we can opt out. It may not be a decision that the council is authorized to make. And if we prohibit those uses but haven't otherwise restricted where they can be, one of the concerns was ending up in a position where we're not able to opt out, but we haven't limited where those uses can be, and now maybe the town is wide open in terms of location. So large-scale cultivation is limited to portions of the industrial zone. The testing facilities are limited to portions of the office park. So that was, and once again, the council's got to make a decision here, but that was sort of the rationale behind this. It wasn't an attempt to be pro-marijuana. It was an attempt to be in a position where we had a framework to try to limit it as much as we could and make the town, you know, as unattractive to these businesses as possible, where at the same time having a framework that might survive challenge, and worst case scenario, we'd have a couple of uses that would be limited to, you know, these very small areas of town rather than the whole town being opened up to them. So that was essentially, I think, what the planning board was trying to do. But clearly they felt that the retail and compassion centers were just inappropriate anywhere, and that the other uses that we might have some ability to regulate from a zoning standpoint would have to go through a very strenuous review process through the zoning board, but would be limited to those two areas of town.
Okay. Haven't heard that. Is there anyone in the audience that didn't fill out a form that would like to speak? Because it is a public hearing. Okay. I mean, I think, you know, I know it's coming across that, you know, we're sending a message that it's okay, but we're really positioning ourselves to limit it where it could potentially be. And if we don't do that, then it could be wide open. So that's why it's on those designated areas. And those designated areas are pretty limited. The testing facilities are would be potentially in the industrial park. And the cultivation centers, that, if there were any, would be inside, but they would be only in light industrial. And we only have 2 areas of light industrial that are zone light industrial. And Peter, help me through this because I want to make sure my memory serves me correctly. It's the old Skater Island Park out there.
Correct.
And
and a small portion of the airport.
Airport.
And then with regard to cultivation, as we mentioned at the last meeting, I think the idea is that, you know, the ideal situations for someone who's looking to do that sort of operation is, you know, a place where you've got some older mill buildings or large vacant buildings, probably in an area where land is less expensive than it is here on the island. So the thought, too, was that Middletown is probably not a big target for large-scale cultivation just because of the lack of infrastructure for that and the high cost of property here.
And by the nature of the ordinance, and I know some of you don't like that, but again, I think we're positioning ourselves so that it's not town-wide. And we're kind of controlling it by taking these measures. No compassion centers, just testing facility and indoor cultivation potentially in only certain limited areas. And again, if we don't do that and it passes, it could open it up for anywhere in town, basically.
And
So-
one thing I might add, once we get a better sense of what may be coming down the pike from the General Assembly, you know, this doesn't prohibit the town trying to opt out of everything. But once again, we wanted to have something in place where if recreational marijuana passes, we weren't starting from scratch. This took a long time to put these provisions in place, and if we have to change it, if we get the ability to tweak it, if we've got the ability, you know, to opt out entirely, once that legislation passes at some point, that's always an option. But it was important to have some framework in place that we could work from quickly if we needed to.
Okay. And sir, you would need to come up and state your name and address for the record, please. And thank you. No problem. I do it all the time from here.
Barlow, 48 James Francis.
How you doing? I didn't recognize you.
Yeah, I just kind of found out about this, so I wasn't prepared to talk tonight. But I guess one of my concerns was, I again applaud the council for the efforts here. I think trying to get out in front of this and control this is absolutely the right thing to do. My concern, as kind of was shared by some of the others, was did we go far enough? And should we be prohibiting all of the marijuana-related businesses? So some of the initial research I was able to do did show that a lot of other municipalities are banning all related businesses. So that's why I was concerned, why are we only going for a portion of it, right? And I agree, we are like limiting it to certain areas, light industrial and office park. But Middletown's not, you know, traditional in terms of, like, it's not a Cranston, it's not a Johnson, it's not a Warwick. We don't have light industrial areas set off kind of in their own zones, really. The light industrial areas we're talking about, like if you talk about that Oliphant Lane area, there's dozens and dozens of residential single-family homes in that area. So, you know, right in the ordinance, I think Section A, Paragraph 8, we say that all businesses, whether it be compassion center, cultivation, testing, clearly says that the council agrees that there are serious adverse impacts of any of these businesses. And that you guys clearly stated. So that's on the record. We're saying all these businesses have an adverse impact. But then I think in Section 11 we say we're willing to accept, I guess, some risk or try to mitigate those impacts for some of these cultivation centers, which may go in particular areas. So I guess my question there would be, we're trying to protect and I think your attempt here is altruistic. You're trying to protect the whole town. I get that. And understanding, you know, the point that council made, I appreciate that because I hadn't heard that point of view. But I think by allowing some of the businesses in, we're protecting the majority of the town, but we're also putting at risk adverse risks, which we clearly state are in any of these businesses. We're subjecting some of our residents to this. So I guess what I would say, you know, if we're going to try to protect the town, let's try to protect the whole town as best we can. And that's why I asked, you know, what would we be looking for in the state legislation that may allow us at some later date to come back and say, hey, we want to prohibit all businesses. So that's really my...
And that still is an option.
Yeah.
We could potentially opt out depending upon what happens. But again,
For example, the League of Cities and Towns is lobbying the General Assembly to allow the decision to opt out to be made at the council level. The most recent drafts of legislation that were presented would require a townwide referendum on each of these uses. So whether it's retail, cultivation, other things of that sort. So which once again, you don't have the same amount of control in that situation that we would have if the council had the ability to opt out. And
Okay.
so,
Yeah, Bob, and I think we all hear your point about trying to protect the whole town, but those certain areas as well, that the ordinance potentially, if it's voted, passes, there's certain areas that you're talking about where it would be those, the cultivation, indoor cultivation and the testing centers. But again, we're trying to control that in case,
No, I
we are protecting the whole town by
no,
doing that, really.
But there are a lot of single-family homes in those areas. In the area of the office park, you have
Yep.
our whole Little League complex, you have our YMCA.
Yep.
There's a lot of other impacts there that I think you really need to take into consideration.
Okay.
That's all my point is.
Okay.
And I guess if this does pass and something comes up for a special use permit, we'll have that opportunity again to have this discussion. But just keep those things in mind, if you would.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that'd like to speak on this? No? Any councilors have any questions or any
Mr.
comments?
President?
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
I'm sorry, would you like?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, thank you. I have two what I consider important issues, and I'm going to take them one at a time. One's on page 5, one's on page 15, for those who have a copy of the actual ordinance, and I know that my fellow councilors do. So on page 5, in paragraph C, item 1C states that the no structure containing marijuana cultivation centers shall be within 1,000 feet of the nearest school, public or private. And I believe this concern came up at the last reading, and I just want to clarify or recall correctly, Mr. Solicitor, let me know if I got this wrong, that the reason that the distances for items 1 and 2, both A and B, was because the ordinance would then appear too prohibitive?
well, you could draw the lines, you could create setbacks that would be a de facto prohibition. In other words, and the planning department spent a lot of time looking at the maps and saying, okay, if it's this far from schools and this far from churches and this far from daycare centers, what area does that leave? And depending on the number, you could create setbacks where there is no space left in the industrial zone or in the office park. And that would essentially, and if you're going to do that, then you might as well just say, okay, we're just going to prohibit it. Because that's a de facto prohibition. It's not, you're not actually leaving any space for that use to operate.
Well, you're not leaving any space with the current zoning, but as we know, zoning changes, and as I read this, it seems that in the name of equity and, avoiding unintended consequences and prioritizing keeping our vulnerable youth protected, that all of the distances should be 1,000 feet. We're obligated to protect the efforts and gains.
If 1,000 feet, and it's up to the council, 1,000 feet basically closes out the entire map. So if that is the desire, then you should just,
And I understand.
Because you're de facto prohibiting it, and the fact that the map might change at some point down the road, that's not going to have any effect. The court is going to look at that and say, yeah, it's prohibited.
So my issue is the equity of the 1,000 feet. You don't just have Middletown youth in the schools. You have them in, as it states in 1B and 1A and 2A, in residential zoning districts or residential use in a non-zoning or a non-residential district. There could be youth in those areas. There's certainly youth in 1B and 2B in houses of worship, parks, playgrounds, playfield, youth center, licensed daycare center, or other location where groups of minors regularly congregate. I don't see the difference.
Well,
I just think it should.
I guess what I'm saying, Councilwoman, is that
Yeah.
if you're going to adopt provisions that prohibit the use being located anywhere, then you should, rather than going through the exercise of supposedly allowing it under certain circumstances and in certain areas, when you're actually intentionally prohibiting it, you should just prohibit it. 'Cause
I don't disagree with that. I mean,
well, I
essentially, I mean, I understand we want to have the ordinance too, so we have something on the record that states the prohibition.
But that would not protect the town in any way in the event we were not able to opt out, because it would be seen basically as a de facto prohibition and could potentially open it up to being located.
Were other distances considered, 500 feet even?
There were a number of different things that were considered and a number of different iterations of the map that the planning department looked at. And they also looked at it in terms of the uses, you know, a small testing lab or facility versus a cultivation center, things of that sort. So there was quite a bit of time that the staff and the planning board went through looking at a number of different options and probably at least a half dozen iterations of the mapping.
And I do want to deviate just a minute and thank the planning board. I know that this has been going on since I was on the planning board, and I know they worked hard, and any improvements or suggestions are not any kind of negative reflection on the planning board. We're all here to make this ordinance the best it can be for Middletown, so I want to put that right on the table. But it seems to me that if we are protecting youth equally in all areas that youth might be, this is a very, maybe it should be prohibited in Middletown. We're a family town.
So, Peter, if it's prohibited, it doesn't give us the ability to opt out.
Well, the ability to opt out is going to be determined by whatever legislation.
Okay. Because you said something about potentially not being able to opt out. When Terry was talking about when you were saying that, hey, look, you're intentionally prohibiting this by what if you say 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet? Yeah. I thought that's what you said.
So the idea here is that if you, we don't know what form the opt-out will take. If recreational is passed, we expect that there will be an opt-out that each community can try to avail themselves of. It very likely could be a referendum of which you have less control over than obviously if it's a vote that's done at the council level. So, but once again, it's up to the council to make this determination, and this is just a recommendation from the planning board. And,
okay. So Peter, for this page 5, the marijuana cultivation centers and the marijuana testing providers. Mm-hmm. Can they be the same at the same distances as for schools, the 1,000 feet, and we still will protect the town and not risk whatever this opt-out is? Is that the kind of the question?
Yeah, I mean, you basically, if you do that, then you're just prohibiting it. And that would, if you want to just prohibit it, then it's prohibited along with everything else, and depending upon what happens with legislation, we may need to scramble to put something together, but once again, it's the decision of the
So,
council.
Peter, are you aware of Mr. Barlow said that other communities have prohibited it everywhere in their town? So where would that put us? Because strategic, this ordinance, at least in my opinion, is more strategic, puts us in a better position to depending upon what's passed or not passed, instead of letting it be town-wide.
That was the intent, yes. I don't know what, and I don't know if Ron, I don't know what all the other communities have done currently. How many communities may have banned all the uses? I'm not sure if Ron. We did take a look at ordinance in other communities, both in Rhode Island and outside of Rhode Island. Ron did speak with other communities where testing facilities and cultivation centers were located to see what sort of issues or problems those communities might be experiencing, compared to the issues with retail and sale facilities.
Okay. Mrs. Flynn.
So I guess the bottom line question is it illegal or is there a downside for all of those distances to be 1,000 feet and protect our youth equally?
Well, once again, if you change it all to 1,000 feet, as a practical matter, you are prohibiting those uses. And so, the ability to, if we're unable or unsuccessful opting out of those uses, the ability to, locate them in these small areas would probably be lost.
But that could also be changed. I mean, if, this is an ordinance, we amend them all the time.
So once again, my suggestion is if your plan is to prohibit the uses, you should just prohibit the uses, not construct a setback such that the map is blacked out.
So, okay, so I'll move on to my second issue then, because it may be a good segue. So on page 15 of the proposed ordinance, the uses table, section 602. I think we determined at the first reading that the patient cultivation and caregiver cultivation, cultivation, that is required to be allowed by law. And so we have that whole row of, yes, allowed by right, correct, Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Now, I noticed that there's prohibited, that, no, it's prohibited in both the open space and public columns. Is that because those are not privately owned?
That's correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm reading it and why they're there. So I see, so a couple of things. On the residential cooperative cultivation, it looks like it's being allowed by a special use permit in the residential zoning districts. And I was wondering, when I saw the prohibited in general business and limited business, what would happen if the mixed use ordinance is exercised and you do have some residential?
Because it's under the Medical Marijuana Act, it's limited to residential zones.
Okay, so anybody who was looking for an apartment and it was in a mixed use.
Not allowed.
It would not be allowed.
So they would not want to live there, right? Like if they wanted to.
They could not cultivate it.
They could not cultivate, okay.
Yes, and once again, and that's for residential cooperative cultivation, which is
Two or more?
two or more individuals getting
Okay.
together, once again, still small scale. So once again, our ability to regulate that from a zoning standpoint is more limited than it is with the larger scale cultivation.
Okay, and so there's no law that says we have to have it as a special use permit in those other residential zones, so we're allowed to have it prohibited in the general business and limited business, which might exercise the mixed use ordinance and have residential. Is that true?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So in the residential cooperative cultivation, unlike the patient cultivation and caregiver cultivation, which by law we have to allow it, correct? There's no law that's saying for the cooperative cultivation that we have to have it as a special use permit. That's our option.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's once again, we don't have that option for individual cultivation, and I think the planning board also indicated that they didn't want to necessarily interfere with personal cultivation for someone who has a medical marijuana card and needs that for, a medical condition.
Okay. So, and this is where, I'm segueing to our options with those distances and whatnot, because I think the biggest concern I have going forward with special use permit designations in the uses table for these new zoning districts is up on the screen, and the criteria and findings for special use permits that the zoning board are required to use when evaluating and approving or denying special use permits. The all but number 3 address negative impacts on property values, quality of life, appropriate property use, or hazardous conditions. honestly, I'm just concerned that no one in any state of the United States really knows what these long-term impacts will be. And yet these are the criteria our zoning board are supposed to use to find whether or not they're going to approve or deny an application. Additionally,
There are additional requirements with regard to commercial cultivation and with regard to testing facilities, very extensive ones.
for the
For special
findings,
use permits, yes.
and those are, are those state dictated? Are they in the
Those are
state law?
Those are in our ordinance. So they're additional
Are they in this?
submissions and findings that apply to, under the draft ordinance, to marijuana cultivation centers and marijuana testing providers. That those start on page 4.
On page 4?
And it's page 4 through, page 4 through the beginning of page 10.
Which is wonderful, additional screenings, but it still doesn't change the fact that the basic ones are unknowns. They're simply unknowns at this point. It's a new industry, it's brand new. In addition, plus you have to find in all of the findings. If you cannot find even just one, it must be denied. Is that true?
It has to meet all the
It
requirements.
has to be all the requirements. So in finding number 3, it says that it requires that the application be compatible with the comprehensive community plan of the town of Middletown. Well, I pulled up our comprehensive plan. I did a search for the word marijuana. It's not in there, not once. Our comp plan doesn't even address this issue. So given that the required findings for the special use permit, even additional ones, they're truly unknown at this point. Our comp plan doesn't even address it. It seems like a special use permit application would fall under false scrutiny, and that concerns me. I mean, I don't know if it concerns my other counselors, but it seems like in the uses table, similar to what I think the gentleman who spoke earlier said, should either be yes, allowed by right, or no, prohibited. And I think I'm leaning to be conservative to say for right now, while this is evolving, that we prohibit in any of those areas that are currently special use permits. And I'd like to open that up for discussion.
I'm taking the safe road. And for me, the safe road is doing what the planning board recommended, because we can control what we can control at this point of the facts we have and what we know. And that, to me, is the safe road. We can go back and change these depending upon what happens at any time. If we open ourselves up for the whole town, and I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure any of us are going to disagree with some of your comments, because I don't. Maybe not all of them, but I want to take the safe road, because I think this is the safest road for us to take. Even though I don't like all of it, I think it's the safest road for the town as a whole, instead of trying to open up the whole town, given what happens if it passes. So that's just I'm one vote, that's my opinion. You know, we're here to do what's best for the whole town, and I know you know that, and I'm sure you are too. And so, you know, I think the planning board did a great job. I know you folks, some of you guys out there don't agree with it, and we might not agree with it in totality, but to me, right now, it's the safest road. It puts us in the best possible position
Well,
for depending upon what happens in the General Assembly.
the safest road is to be proactive and not reactive, and to change these allowed by right with a special use permit to prohibited at this time with the first approval.
Well, that's your opinion, and I respect it. Any other
I
councilors?
think that after listening to the public, I
Okay.
think that they would agree.
Okay,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
okay. I don't think we all speak for the public, because I'm sure there's a lot of people here that maybe have a different opinion. I don't know. But to me, we're certainly, my opinion, I think we're taking a safe road at this point in time, where we can make future decisions based upon what happens and be safe instead of open it up to the whole town. I'm not willing to potentially open it up to the whole town. I'm just not.
I'm not sure I understand that comment, if you pass this ordinance with the uses table more conservative, does that not protect the town? You have the ordinances in place?
That's not the way I understand it from Mr. Regan. I don't know about my fellow councils, that's not what I'm understanding.
Mr. Egan?
Yes, ma'am.
So the question is, can the council pass this ordinance with the uses table in a more conservative presentation and have the special use permits changed to prohibited, still pass the ordinance, but fix just the uses table portion of it so that the special use areas are now prohibited, to be proactive and not reactive to something that might happen.
Well, first of all, you wouldn't be able to prohibit the cooperative cultivation under the current Medical Marijuana Act. With regard to prohibiting larger scale cultivation and testing facilities, yes, you could do that. If new legislation passes and you have to opt out of that, let's say by referendum or other means, you would not, that prohibition would not be effective until you've completed that opt-out. And so, once again, the idea was to have something in place that would limit if that opt-out was not successful, would be to limit those uses to one or two small areas of town where it would have the least impact, rather than potentially having the entire general business zone or other areas of town potentially open for development of these businesses.
So you just said that the cooperative cultivation, we could not change those from special use to prohibited, even though that those are not set by a law.
Those are part of the current Slater Medical Marijuana Act. Those are part of current state law.
So
Some of those uses.
For the
it's not in the
cooperative
ordinance.
cultivation?
Yeah.
Okay, because I
that's-
asked
and
about
that's
them
the-
earlier, and you said those were our option, that those are special use by our option, they were not part
Yeah,
of a law.
special use as opposed to just allowed by right.
Oh, but they can't be prohibited?
Yes.
So there is a law?
Yeah, there is a law with regard to those.
Okay, so for the ones that are not tied to a law,
So which are basically the recreational sale is the ones that we are anticipating and which have been prohibited.
yeah, the cultivation center, the one in cultivation, the one in non-residential cooperative, and the one in marijuana testing. I think that only leaves 3, if that whole line of residential cooperative cultivation must stay special use or allowed by right. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so I would just propose that those be prohibited then, and then we're doing everything that the law says we must do, and we're being proactive on anything else.
Okay. Councilor Welch, thank you.
Thanks. Surprisingly, I agree with a lot of things that Terry said. So I look at just to point to her zoning districts, and to back up to what Peter had said before about making Middletown unattractive, non-business friendly to marijuana. I know no compassion centers, but for testing facilities and indoor cultivation. We're going all around it. Why don't we just say no? I understand the stance of what the solicitor has said, but there's other towns and cities that are doing it. I think we're offering this little teeny window. I don't see the point. In this whole chart, we get rid of 2 S's, and they're all N's, and then we can just prohibit it outright. And if we get to opt out, then opt out. So I am for, don't give them anything, except what they have to get, which is medical marijuana card. You can grow it yourself or with a cooperative. We have no choice on that. Otherwise, no.
Okay. Peter, does that, what Tom just said, does that still put us in an opt-out position?
Yes.
Well, you're prohibiting it, yeah. But once again, that's.
But does it open,
it's up
but
to-
does that open it up to the rest of the town?
I guess once again, and this is, it's a little bit of a chicken versus the egg in terms of, you're trying to figure out what may be coming down the pike in terms of legislation and what opportunity we may have and whether or not we will have time to make adjustments to the ordinance such that if we're unable to opt out, or there'll be an opt-out provision, but if the opt-out of those uses is not successful, we would want to have something in the ordinance that limited where those things would go and where they would have the least amount of impact, setbacks, et cetera, all the sorts of things that are in the ordinance now. I guess one of the things that we could, and I'm somewhat thinking out loud right now, but one of the possibilities might be if you're going to say we're going to prohibit these, but to have somewhat of a backup provision in the ordinance that might say, and I'll have to take a look at this and see whether this would be possible, but maybe a provision that would say, in the event that we are unable to prohibit these uses, then these provisions will apply in terms of location, in terms of setback, in terms of special use permit, other things of that sort. The concern that I have, once again, is not trying to be, pro-marijuana, because I think the council has made it very clear what its position is with regard to marijuana-related businesses. The idea is to try to protect the town in the event that the legislation that comes down the pike ties our hands in terms of what we can do. And so that may be perhaps an interim option that would prohibit those, but have a backup provision in the ordinance that said in the event that prohibition is not effective, that these provisions would take place and limit those uses to these areas.
Is that
If
legal
that's-
or possible to do?
I think it's possible, but I would want to have the opportunity to review it, to talk with our consultant about it, and to bring something back to the council at the next meeting.
Because we're not the first to try and do this, I'm sure.
No.
There's got to be other places in the country that are either successful
No.
or haven't been successful with
Yeah.
what you're proposing.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure, me
No,
personally.
I want to make sure, that's why I'm not saying to go ahead and do that right this second. I'd like to, if it's the feeling of the council that they would prefer, at the same time, while trying to protect the town and give us options, if the legislation that comes down limits our ability to regulate, but prohibit to the extent that we can, let me explore that. Let me talk with our consultant who's drafted these ordinances in a number of different jurisdictions, a number of different states, and see if we couldn't come back to you with some language that might cover us in both situations.
Okay, I mean, I think that's fair.
That-
Do we,
Mrs. Flynn,
would we keep the public hearing open then, and then?
that was
Yes,
that
I
was
would
going to be
recommend-
my
yes,
next
We
question.
would keep the public hearing open.
Okay, That's
Let
fair
me-
enough.
Let me review this and research that, and perhaps come back to you with an alternative that might, once again, allow you to put a prohibition in place, but have a backup plan in the event that that prohibition is determined not to be effective.
okay.
Okay?
Hang on one sec, Mrs. Santos.
Yes, thank you, sir. Mr. Reagan, do you have any idea when the legislature is going to do anything about this? When it's coming down the pike? Has there been any
We thought it
word?
might have been coming down the pike this session, but I think there's probably a fair chance it'll be the next session.
All right,
you know.
thank
So we still have a little time.
We have some time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lori? We're going to follow the rules the best we can. Okay.
Peter, I had a question related to the opt-out, will that language be at the discretion of the council for the opt-out, or that'll be a statewide?
That'll be it'll be statewide. As I said, the most recent version of recreational legislation that was in the General Assembly required opt-out by referendum.
Right.
The League of Cities and Towns has been lobbying to allow opt-out at the city and town council level. So we don't know. We have to be prepared for either one.
But they could have the ability to
Yeah, but
dictate the language.
the General Assembly will determine what form the opt-out.
But right now, we do not.
What's that?
We do not right now, currently, and that's important too,
Yep.
based upon what we have in front of us. Okay, Teresa.
Teresa Spangler, 132 Peckham Lane. Just a real quick question. When this came up with alcohol and distance of serving alcohol near schools and things like that, we have very strict rules on that. So are we going to be allowed to have those kinds of same strict guidelines for distance when it comes to, as Mrs. Flynn said, other facilities like the YMCA and places that have our youth? And then the other question I have is, if these facilities and the opt-out or it ends up happening in our community, who is going to be monitoring and regulating these facilities? Is it townwide, or
it's
is it?
It's gonna be the state, and it's gonna be the regulation. Right now, the medical marijuana program is migrated from the Department of Health to the Department of Business Regulation, and we'd assume the Department of Business Regulation will take the lead in any licensing going forward. So the town's ability to regulate will really be limited to zoning. So, you know, where and when and those sorts of things.
So what, if this happened and the facilities are here, we don't have any jurisdiction over making sure that they are, I know they're not for sale, right? These are we're not talking a store at this point in time, is that correct?
Those are not permitted yet, no.
Okay,
But we're assuming that they will be allowed sometime in the near future.
So that would be my question, is who regulates what's going on in these facilities, making sure that if they are going to end up in our town, what's going to happen and who's going to be monitoring them closely for?
The licensing and all those requirements would be done at the state level, and if they do end up being allowed, where they're located, the hours of operation, all those things that, you know, how we regulate other businesses through the zoning code would hopefully be done at the town level.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this? Okay, so what's the pleasure of my colleagues? Is it to continue this till we get, see if Mr. Regan comes back with a potential provision in the ordinance that could potentially be added based on the consultant that has drawn up these types of ordinances throughout different jurisdictions of different
I will try to come up with
states?
something that makes everybody happy.
Well, why don't you do that in the first
No, I
place?
should have done it at the start, right?
All right. Well, that's why we have good dialogue and conversations that, hey, we'll figure it out. You know, we all want to get it right, as right as we can get it. And hopefully, and again, it depends. We just want to make sure we're positioned to be in the best position possible. That's all. Okay, so good dialogue. Do you need a motion for that, Wendy, or we just, to keep it open?
Motion to keep it open and then a motion to continue.
Motion to keep the public hearing open.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Motion to continue this discussion to the September.
Peter, excuse me, Tom. Peter, what's a time frame that would fall within potentially the next session, and what you could have it back to as in a reasonable time frame?
You would have to do the first one in October, because if you try to do this one, you only really have a week.
There's only a week before the next meeting?
Well, it's the 20th, but we need everything by the 13th.
Is it would it be
I
October?
think it would be the
First meeting in October?
just,
Fair enough.
just in terms of just the complexity of.
And if for some reason it's not ready till the second meeting of October, just let us know so the public knows.
I think the first meeting will know
Okay.
in short order whether we can do this, and then it's just a matter of drafting it, so
Okay.
we'll get it done.
Fair enough.
Motion to continue the matter to the first meeting in October.
Second?
Motion is second to continue this public hearing to the first meeting in October. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay? Let's move on to number 12, continued from the August 16, 2021 regular meeting. Email communication from Simon Cousins, Island Elements, Island Surf and Sports, Elemental Surf and Skate, in reference to Third Beach concession agreement.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second?
We have a motion, a second, to receive said email communication.
Just for the record, I'm going to recuse on this matter.
Please
Mr.
note
President.
that the town solicitor is recusing on this matter, and Counselor Marissa is, I'm going to butcher your last name, so I'll just say Marissa, is taking his place, is filling in. So, motion to second to receive, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sean?
We received correspondence from Simon Cousins, Elemental Surf, just notifying us that he would not be operating at Third Beach this season, which actually ended this past Monday. We were aware of this throughout the season, and I think just through a series of circumstances, it just hasn't made it to the town council. This is the 5th year of his concession contract, so it's a loss of revenue of $8,500 to the town. But the issue is that we changed our policy at Third Beach. We basically restricted parking for resident season pass holders only, and that basically is not his clientele. So to operate there, he would have operated at a loss. And again, you know, he had discussed this with us.
Yep.
We tried to identify maybe a way for him to operate, and there really wasn't a clean way to do it. So
Okay, fair enough. I think
think-
that's fair enough. And do any councils have any questions or comments? Okay.
And I just want, you know, to make sure, and Simon did too, that the council was aware
Yep.
of what the circumstances were.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, let's move on to number 13, communication from Charlie Roberts, co-chair, Middletown Public Schools Building Committee, in reference to requesting town council to vote to execute a letter of intent to RIDE, Rhode Island Department of Education, for school buildings.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second?
We have a motion, a second, to receive the said communication. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Motion to authorize the town president to execute the letter of intent to ride.
Second?
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion on this? We had a special meeting last Wednesday, and it's just, this is non-binding. This just allows, and help me out a little bit, Rosemary and Teresa, if I botch it a little bit. This just allows us to go to the state and say, look, you know, we're interested, and because there is a potential level from 35% to 52% potentially. You almost had me saying 90, which isn't. It was in the back of my mind, for reimbursement. So, but this is just allowing stage 1 or phase 1. What would happen after this, they would present this to the letter of intent to the state, signed by Rosemarie or Teresa or myself, and saying, with the authorization of my colleagues, saying, hey, you know what, we're interested in potentially upgrading our facilities. We're going to put together a plan of what needs to be done and start gathering costs at some point. They would have, after this, they would have from now, September, till February, to be able to come back with a phase 2 and then present that to us. Is that accurate? Okay, excellent. Is there any questions?
Just one.
Councilor Logan.
We were waiting for the school committee to have their special meeting to say that they were getting behind this before we jumped on.
Yes.
So has that meeting taken place, and what was the outcome?
Yes. So come on up.
I had a meeting at 5:15 this evening, and we voted unanimously to sign it. I've signed it already. The superintendent signed it. It's now in your hands. So yes, we have it passed and ready to roll, and we'll work on it very hard between now and February if you
Okay,
folks
excellent.
support it.
All right, excellent. Okay, thank you, Teresa, and thank you, Chris. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion, a second, to authorize the council president to execute the letter of intent to ride. All in favor?
Aye.
Does anybody oppose? Excellent. Let's move on to town council business. Number 14, continued from the August 16, 2021 meeting. Communication of Council Toronto in reference to Middletown School Maintenance Department, IT Department, and the Accounting Department merged with the Middletown DPW, IT Department, and Accounting Department.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second?
A motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Council Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was something that the council had voted on in the past to merge these three groups. And I know we've had several conversations. I was talking with Paul and about getting an update on this, and he recommended that I do put it on the docket for discussion. So I'd like to turn it over to Sean and maybe give us an update on where we're at with this project and when we might be able to have something, you know, for closure on when this would be done.
Sure. We are currently working with the school department on identifying an accounting system that would be utilized by both the town and school department. When we looked at the consultant's report, and I think generally from a professional standpoint, we identified that the accounting system is the most important project that we need to address together. So the staff, and when I say the staff, both the town finance department and the school business office have been primarily meeting with a company called Munis Technologies, looking at their general ledger product as a solution that we can implement. And what they're primarily looking at is not only the legal entity accounting ability of the product, but also the ability to address the regulatory reporting that the school department has with RIDE and the finance office has with the Department of Revenue. Mark and the finance office put together a couple slides just talking or looking at the cost of the product. It's about $500,000. The estimate right now is $487,000 for the product. And there's also been some preliminary discussion about the implementation timeline for it, which is roughly 1.5 to 2 years. And those are details that Mark, Cindy, and the other staff are basically working through. So that's our primary effort right now. We've also had a meeting with the solicitor and the school committee's legal counsel about governance issues about merging the departments. School legal counsel has provided us a letter which outlines concerns that he has relative to general statute and responsibilities of the school committee, as well as questions about how this would be organized. That's an ongoing discussion, and we had a discussion as recently as last week about this. The third sort of leg on this stool, it's a three-legged stool, are labor issues as we look at employees of both organizations. I had a preliminary discussion with our labor counsel, Vin Regasta, and we're in the process of having a follow-up meeting with him, the solicitor and I, to identify really some significant labor issues that need to be resolved before the discussion can continue. So those are the three things that I've been working on, and we'll continue to pursue as directed by the council.
Okay.
And just as a follow-up, I would expect that perhaps following the meeting that we have with Vin with regard to the collective bargaining issues, that we will probably try to schedule maybe an executive session with the council to talk about those issues, because those are frankly some of the most, in addition to the governance and sort of chain of command issues, because we have a lot of governance issues that are specifically set forth by statute, particularly with regard to the school department and the schools, some of which has been just changed recently in the last session. The collective bargaining issues are particularly thorny, so I think we'll have the meeting with Vin and then probably maybe have a follow-up discussion with the council with regard to those issues.
Okay. Councilors have any comments? Mrs. Flynn?
I just have a question on the finances that are on the slides that we got in hard copy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at the current product cost, the $139.5. Is that a recurring cost? It's on page 2 of the slides.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that would only go up to 214,800 on a regular basis. The first year is the expensive year because it's the initial purchase. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay, so it's going to be like $80,000 more a year
For software.
once we get going.
Right.
Yeah,
And
okay.
the only thing I would add is that we would be bringing payroll under this proposal in-house. We would no longer pay ADP for that, so there would be an additional FTE that would be proposed for the town finance office.
And in the overall budget, the school department gets some money for their functioning, and will that help offset, what comes from the town side? Because the town now pays for accounting and the school pays for accounting. Those monies we will get some sort of statement that will say, here's what each side is paying now, and then here's the consolidation side, or the consolidation view. Will we be getting that?
Well, we'd have to come up with an operating budget with whatever we come up with for a solution. It would be forthcoming.
That's what I'm,
And then we would also, to the extent that it impacts the maintenance of effort for what the town is funding for school operations, we would have to get some guidance and approval from RIDE to make sure that if we're incurring some costs on the town side that the schools are paying for now, that we're getting credit for that, so we're not somehow having to pay twice.
right.
Okay,
Just putting it out there. Thank you.
okay. Any further discussion? Mrs. Santos?
Thank you, sir. Whoever wants to answer. Where would the maintenance department go to? Would they stay where they presently are, or would they move in with our own employees?
We're not even there. I have no answer for you.
I'm sorry?
I have no answer for you tonight. We're still, again, looking at governance issues and issues related to collective bargaining. So until those are answered, those more significant issues, we're not in the weeds of where people are sitting.
So you also do not have an answer for the accounting department, where they're going to be going?
I don't, but the accounting department doesn't necessarily have to be co-located. I think that's something we have to discuss from an efficiency standpoint. But the same issues apply. We've operated with a common accounting system in the past, so there's no reason that we can't do that in the future. Right?
All right, thank you.
Any further comments?
Yeah, I do.
Council Toronto?
When I was looking into this isn't really like we're joining. I mean, there's still going to be employees of the school and employees of the town working in a merging together kind of. That was my understanding of this. This wasn't combining the departments. I thought we were looking at them working together. Maybe they're running two separate systems. We don't need a full-on new system. Maybe they're working with their system in the town, and we're working with the school, and we're in the same building, and we're working closely together. Same thing with maintenance. I thought we were talking about, well, there'd still be a maintenance budget on the school side, there'd be a maintenance budget on the town side, but they would be in the same building, and they would work closely together, like we do now. We do work for the school, and the school, uses our resources to do that. So that's kind of what I thought we were exploring here. At least that's what I was told the last time.
The vote
Now I'm
was-
being
the
told
vote
that we're
was-
actually going to merge these groups together and take the employees from the school and put them as town employees now?
The
Because I
vote-
heard different just recently.
The vote was to merge the departments.
Right, but I heard that we were not merging the dollars. In other words, we weren't taking the facility, we weren't taking maintenance from the school and just adding it to the town, and so the school doesn't have any maintenance department. I heard that it were going to be two separate groups, but physically in the same building, working together. That's what I
It
heard.
was to merge the departments into one department, was the vote from the directive from the council.
Okay, well, that's what I was told different.
Can I, Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
Just to comment in regard to what Mr. Toronto was saying. As a school person, it would seem to me that one of the considerations that you have to think of is that the school department finance office is intimately connected with the superintendent's activity. And from my perspective, having been in that seat, separating the finance office from the school department, the office now, I'm not talking about the mechanisms, but the office of the school department, the finance office from the superintendent's office complicates school department business. I think you need to think about that. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do anything. I just want people to be aware that that is a consideration.
Okay.
Okay, just in regards to the Muni system from the ERP standpoint, what is that, 214,000? How is that priced? Is that user-based pricing? That's unlimited users? What's behind the 214,892?
I think we can bring the proposal forward to you once Mark has worked through the details. Again, as I said in my memo, we are continuing to meet with Munis and identify what products and services we would actually need to purchase. So I'm here to provide an update of what I've been working on, and we can provide those additional details when they're available.
Well, I think they should be available. You're quoting the numbers right now at 214. This number's going to get out, and people are going to need to know answers. So I encourage us to get some answers as soon as possible. If it's user-based pricing, I see there's different modules. What I'm seeing is that this application is going to replace New World, Infinite Vision, ADP, and Paycor. Now, I'm not sure why we would go away from ADP. I mean, we were just looking for certain modules to accommodate what we're looking to do here. What's New World do, and what's Infinite Vision do for us today?
New World is the town's accounting system. Infinite Vision is the school's accounting system.
Okay, so we couldn't run those two parallel with each other with an application that cross, maybe, because I think the school system currently is really tied to the state in a lot of ways, reporting-wise. So is there a possibility that you continue to run two accounting systems?
It's just inefficient from a reporting standpoint.
Well,
And
there are applications that actually will allow you to do consolidated financials.
again, I'm providing you an update. I can provide you the details subsequent to this. I'm following what I believe, we're supposed to find an efficient system. Right now, we do not have an efficient system operating the two different financial systems. And if we're discussing, as the council had directed, consolidating the department, for me, it makes the most sense to operate off of one accounting system, not two.
So are you also telling me then that if we don't do this, you still need to replace these accounting systems because they're not efficient? Is that what you just said?
I'm saying that we would operate more efficiently with a single accounting system for both departments.
Okay, I thought you just said that they're not good systems today and that we're going to have to do something. So
I
you could
think
continue-
you're
so we did
putting
nothing,
words in
you
my mouth
continue
to make a
using that?
point. I guess if you want to make the point that we don't need to purchase accounting systems, that's fine. I would make your point, but I would appreciate not putting words in my mouth. So
I thought excuse me, Sean. I thought I just heard you say that neither of these are efficient.
They're
And
not.
I'm just asking a question.
It's not
If
efficient with a single
we didn't-
department.
I guess my question is if we don't merge these departments together, then there's no need to buy the Muni system. Is that correct? Because these other systems are fine.
I've provided you an update. I can't, I'm having difficulty following where we're headed with this.
Okay, so I'm going to sum it up, I guess, based on what I'm hearing. So I have a question for the school department. So based on what we just did with the buildings and facilities and stuff like that, and we voted, the council voted, which I didn't vote on for family reasons, probably going on 2 years now. It seems a little long for me, I'm sure for most people. However, we're at where we're at right now. So do we or do we not? It's my understanding that, do we have a facilities director currently or not? That's employed by the town. And I only ask that because I've heard that various things in the past week from various people that we no longer have a facilities director, and if we don't, then maybe it's a good time, is my point, to move this thing along. That's that. I don't think they all need to be moved at the same time. That's just my opinion.
The facilities director did tender his resignation.
Okay.
Effective this coming Friday.
Okay.
So as the solicitor said, there are a lot of governance issues. So while we have a vacant position, it's not just a good time. We really have to get down to the nits of the situation in terms of governance and state stature. So those are the things that the school committee's attorney and our town solicitor are working through.
Okay, can't we look at, I mean, we have a list of other cities and towns that have done this. Can we look and see how they did it?
Yes, we have that data, and I mean, it's just an update, so, and they have been unsuccessful. That's the data we have. They've tried it, and they've been unsuccessful.
Unsuccessful, okay.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Yeah, in what ways have they been unsuccessful? What does that mean?
I don't have that data in front of me. It just, Councilwoman Von Villis talked about access of the finance director for the superintendent. There's been issues there, purchase orders, just who reports to whom as you, with facilities. So there's layers of things that really we need to go through, legally, logistically, and that's where, again, the school committee's attorney and our town solicitor are
Okay.
dealing with that.
All right, but this isn't a beat-up session, believe me. It's
No.
more of an inquiry session, but it's kind of getting frustrating that it's not just you, on the town side as well. It's 2 years, and we're not moving on it.
Well,
And you
I-
can disagree with that, and I respect that.
Well, and I
but
think-
it's 2 years, and it's.
But a
to
year
me,
of
it
it-
seems like there's some type of reluctance for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know, I mean,
We've been dealing with COVID. The town administrator and myself, his team, and our team have been dealing with COVID. That has been the forefront of keeping our town safe and our schools safe. So that has consumed us for a year and a half, 18 months.
okay.
Yeah.
So I just think, just my personal opinion is, I think that the educators should be educators, and I'd like to see just one person in charge of all town buildings. One facilities person that just oversees the whole town buildings. And, you know, we plan for the future. So that's why I think it's important now, as we move forward, that the timing of it is, for me, I think, and for the town, I think it's critical. I do. I mean, it's just my opinion. Mrs. Santos?
Yes. Thank you, sir. Mrs. Craig, I've heard through the grapevine, are you now advertising for a facilities manager?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So,
I do want to thank the town council for supporting the stage one. And I want to commit to you that we will, as I said at our workshop, that we will go through this process together. So you're equally informed, and it won't be just a school committee decision or a school decision. It will be all of us making a decision to go forward. So thank you.
okay. So is there no time frame on this project, or it's just, because most projects, we have timelines and timeframes, and, you know, it just seems like, and again, you're not going to like this, but it just seems like there's reluctance.
No, and again, what I would have said is what Rosemarie said. We've gone through 18 months of COVID. We've had difficulty meeting, not only just having the discussion, and that's an issue I brought up last time. You know, I think, and I'll just use your example of the school facilities director, it may seem like a good time because there's a vacancy, but the problem is, and I'll just use buildings as an example, state statute charges responsibility of the school buildings to the school committee. They cannot vacate that responsibility. So the discussion needs to happen. This person who's going to take over both buildings, how is that going to work with the school committee? They don't advocate their responsibilities. So while we're talking about creating one department, that one department will report to a town council on one side and still report to the 5-member school committee. And then also within state law, there's the new provisions regarding authority of the local principals and issues that Rosemarie struggles with. So those are issues that have been identified by both our solicitor and by the school committee's legal counsel, and those are issues that need to be worked out. And then when it comes to the labor side, there's issues that I've already discussed with Vin Regasta that we also need to discuss in detail when we look at the labor contracts as well as the recognition clauses and the work that's been divvied up between the different bargaining units. So it's not an easy problem. I've been clear about that from the beginning. As Rosemarie said, and we have a neighboring city who had combined their facilities department, city school department, and they undid it this year. They undid it with the beginning of the school year. So, those are things that we have to look at. Why did those relationships not work out for the long run? So, we need a plan, and we need to have a lot of discussion to make sure that the details are understood. Otherwise, we'll just fall into the same trap, I think, that has happened in other communities.
Councilor Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two things. One, I just want to go back again to this recurring cost. I'm just trying to find out what the costs are going to be going forward, whether we do this or not. That was the purpose of my questions in regards to the systems that we're going to go away from and the new system we're going to buy. I work with ERP software, but mostly manufacturing and distribution companies, not municipalities. I've been doing it for 30 years. There's got to be a much more detailed proposal, and I think that's what you said you were going to send to me, so I appreciate that. This is a very high number. This is really expensive. If you looked at us as a $75 million, $80 million company, this is very expensive. So maybe that's just municipality software. This is the going price for it. But I can tell you, I need to know how many users this is and all the modules that are included in this particular purchase, because this is very expensive. The implementation, that could be, I would have to look at that in the data conversion. But from a software, reoccurring software, if this was a one-time purchase of $214,000, maybe with a maintenance charge of 10 or 15%, that might be a little bit, more palatable. But $215,000 a year for as long as you use this software is a big number. Big number. Now, it's hosted. I'm sure this is a SaaS offering, so there's no, so they're serving it up through the cloud and things along those lines. But I think I could help out, maybe working with Mark to just make sure we're getting a very competitive bid. And I'm not saying Mark's not going to get one, but this is what I do for a living. I'd be happy to help out. And the other piece to it is, as Paul has said, is I'm seeing here that there are combined schools that have done this and self-hosted and things along those lines. That's great to see. So maybe we can inquire with them in regards to the pricing on this. But also, over the last 2 years or 3 years, I haven't really seen any plans come forward. I'm hearing, when we bring it up, I hear we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. Here are the problems, here are the things we need to overcome. But no paperwork, no documentation, no plan ever follows that. So I think we're at a point we need a plan. We need to know what the challenges are, what we need to do to overcome them, what are the benefits of doing it, what are the risks, and then we can make a decision. Maybe this is, based on what we hear from Sean, isn't the right decision to do at this time, but the council at one point did believe this would be the right choice. We voted to do it. We need to move forward and look a little bit more deeper at this.
Okay.
With a timeline.
Yep. I agree. I just think, you're right, COVID I get all the safety stuff, but a lot of stuff was getting done during COVID too. Upgrading facilities and stuff like that. The front of Gaudet, that got all done during COVID. So it's not like we were sitting on our hands and just focusing on just COVID, because we weren't. We were doing other things. So, I just, maybe I don't know enough about it, but I know one thing, nothing's happening. And when a council votes on something and goes by 2 years, it's kind of embarrassing that we don't have updates, we don't have any of that stuff. So that's what we're looking for, okay? And if it doesn't work and you can present every reason it doesn't work, then maybe we have that discussion. But so far, we've got nothing, as far as I'm concerned. So thank you for the update. And when is our next update? When will we have something?
I would like to have the meetings with to occur between Peter and Attorney Scungio, and then the meeting between Peter and Vin Regasta.
Yeah, because it's 2 years later, and all of a sudden, the school lawyer has an issue. Like, he didn't know that from the beginning?
No, we received a memo. The council received a memo from him.
Okay, when was that?
That was right after you passed the resolution.
Okay, so we haven't done anything with it.
No, but the council hasn't met with the school committee either. It's been a difficult discussion to schedule. It's been a difficult issue to find a space for.
Do we need a subcommittee for this?
I think that it would be advisable to have the attorneys go through the issues that are already in discussion, and then we can report back to you as,
Okay, so what's that date?
I don't have that date.
Okay, can you get us that date, please?
We can.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, let's move on. Number 15, memorandum of Council Flynn in reference to update request, parking ordinance.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
We have a motion, a second to receive. All in favor? Aye. Councilor Flynn.
Well, actually, Mr. Brown put together a phenomenal summary of what's been going on, and I guess I can summarize it pretty quickly. It's a great example to the public as to how things get done. So apparently, the subcommittee for the uses table of the planning board met in May and in June, and they presented their recommended changes to the planning board in August, and they're going to meet again in September. So I'm sorry, the August is it's a parking and use table subcommittee. So 4 meetings, May, June, August, and September, and then they'll get in front of the planning board if they come to a consensus. And then if the planning board comes to a consensus, it'll come to council. So from April to possibly November is one review of one ordinance. And at least it's proceeding, but things take a while. They need to be vetted, screened, and reviewed, and I think it's a great example of how great things get done in Middletown.
Okay, excellent.
But that does take a while.
Okay, the wheels of government. That's why we need to keep pushing forward on things.
Yes, sir, don't
Okay,
we?
we sure do.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for that. That was wonderful.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Sean. So, Wendy, did we vote on that? We did. Okay. So let's move on to number 16. Memorandum of Council Flynn, reference to update request, remote public participation.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
Motion to second receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Council Flynn.
Well, again, Mr. Brown responded in writing. It's in our docket, and he reports that a solution for audio has been identified to allow for proper noise canceling, and they're investigating why Zoom experiences occasional delays. And my question to Mr. Brown is, could the council meetings, public meetings, move forward with at least the audio solution for those people who can't make it or choose, for health reasons and COVID reasons, not to participate in person, but they really want to? Could the audio get set up?
So we've ordered the equipment necessary. It requires a change in the switchgear and it requires a different audio system, which would cancel the feedback between the microphones we use and what comes in from the public. So we're expecting to receive that equipment in October.
Outstanding. I know a lot of people will be looking forward to it.
But I got to tell you, I like having you in person. You, no?
Well, that's just for public.
I would still be here in person. This is just for public participation.
All right, just checking.
I'm coming.
I think I see that angle.
Mr.
Okay,
President?
yes, ma'am, yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes.
So we'd be using the new audio equipment, and would that be being used with Zoom, or is that we're going to be having a new application along with the new gear?
Right now, we would continue to use Zoom.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, thank you. Number 17, memorandum of Council Flynn, update request, beach restoration.
Motion received said memorandum.
Second?
Motion is second to receive, all in favor?
Aye. Once again, in the packet in writing, and it's online for those who might be watching on Clerk Base or the Secretary of State site. And this is the beach erosion and restoration issue that came up in June. Apparently, according to Mr. Brown's report, that the experts at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife are no longer available for input. And the expert at CRMC who has retired, Janet Friedman, who I've worked with before, or at least sat with and got some information on, has agreed to come and give Middletown Council an analysis of the beach conditions in Middletown. And if we can make that happen, I think that's a great recommendation. So, Mr. Brown, do you have how we would do that or anything to follow
No,
up with
so-
that recommendation?
Yeah, so we reached out to Dr. Boothroyd and Dr. Spalding. One of those gentlemen actually passed away. I'm not sure, I'm not going to know which one offhand without my notes. So they're no longer available. They had primarily worked with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and with the issues related to the Mayford River. We have reached out to Janet, who worked with them and has a lot of this information, and she'd be happy to come down and meet with the council. I actually spoke to Warren this morning. He was going to talk to Wendy, and she was going to reach out to Paul to identify a meeting where we could get her in and provide a presentation to the council and the beach committee at the same time. So once we can identify a date, we can have Janet come in. And she's very familiar with Second Beach. She helped us a lot when we had the Hurricane Sandy money and did some of the resiliency work, which, at the storm, you can see the dunes didn't topple. We have those at the right elevation. The road between the two beaches didn't flood, so that elevation project worked really well. But she's very familiar with the beach and familiar with the work that was completed by the two gentlemen that had worked for U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and I think she'll have a lot of insight to share with you.
Okay,
So yes, it's coming.
yes.
Thank
Any
you.
further discussion? Okay, thank you. Number 18, memorandum of myself in reference to Paradise Park Trails.
Motion received said memorandum.
Second?
Motion is second to receive, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I put roughly 10 years ago, it might have been more than that, Sean, I think 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was. The town had acquired from the Diocese of Providence the land adjacent to or abutting Paradise Park. So, I'm not sure, Sean, is it 7 acres in there? I think it's roughly 7 acres, additional acres that could be expanded into trails in that park. That park, I mean, not because I live up the street. Mason Hawes, who was on the Open Space and Fields Committee, actually brought it up. But prior to that, Sean and I had a conversation about it. Maybe a month before Mason had sent the email out to us. So that park gets used tremendously, and it's beautiful. So I thought, well, hey, when Mason sent the email, why not put it on the docket? And, maybe there's grants available. Who knows what's available? But I think, that land is sitting there, and, there's a neighbor that sits up a little further. They'd have to be taken into consideration, obviously, with some type of buffer if it does happen. But I think maybe we should the idea was to get a feeling from the council is, do you want to explore that or not? I think me personally, Again, not because I live there, but I've thought about it since the day we bought it. And it's just sitting vacant, and why not expand the trails in that park and give people more use for that park? So, just a thought, just kind of want your input, if there's any appetite for this or not. If there is, great. We can forward that to the Open Space and Fields Committee as well. If there's not, then we move on, okay? Mrs. Flynn?
I guess the first question that comes to my mind is you are the owner, and it would be opening up to the public, and would you need to sign some sort of document that, you're allowing it to be used for public open space and you're not liable? And I don't know how that would work, to have a private property be open to the public.
It's not private, the town owns it.
Oh, the town owns it?
The town owns it. We
Oh.
bought that about 10, 12 years ago. And I apologize, I didn't have my English teacher, I should have spell checked this. And I looked at it tonight, and I said, oops, I sent it from my phone, So, no, the town owns the land.
Okay.
Yeah.
My apologies.
No, no
Thought it was
worries.
your land.
Yeah, no, not mine, it's the town land.
I
Town
must
owns
have
it.
read it that fast, okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh.
So, whatever the pleasure of the council is, just an idea, and Mr. Welch?
Would dogs have to be on a leash?
Yes,
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 I just ask them.
yes.
definitely.
So, any comments? Mr. Logan?
I think anything that is going to expand our recreational capabilities and abilities is a good thing for the residents of Middletown. And it may even bring some visitors who want to stroll through our lovely park if we have extra trails.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Mrs. Flynn?
Is it wet or anything? Does anything flow through it?
It's not any wetter than what's there in the back already.
It's about the
Because it's fairly
same.
wet back there. But they made nice trails there, and I think, anytime, like Chris said, that was the idea behind it, was anytime we can expand that, use for the residents, I think it's a good thing. Just my
Certainly
opinion.
worth exploring.
Yeah, Mr. Welch?
I'm just going to say that I'm all for, obviously, more open space access, but just be mindful that someone has to maintain that. So next budget session, we might need more employees.
It's a good point.
Maybe a new mower.
Maybe, yeah, it depends what happens with it, if you move forward, great. If we don't, if we look at it and we say, you know what, let's just keep it the way it is, then that's the way it ends up. Or maybe there's just trails with no grass. Who knows?
Okay.
Who knows?
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Is there a stone wall dividing the two properties? I don't recall, I don't remember.
I don't think so. There's one in the front that's all dilapidated,
Right,
but
but isn't there one that goes from Prospect
I don't believe so.
alongside on the west
I
side?
don't- It's just overgrown brush unless, we bought it overgrown, so I've never seen a wall, because I've never been in there, but, I've been close to it, but unless it's overgrown, I'm not sure.
I don't believe there's a wall.
No?
I've
Yeah.
walked back there. It's
Okay.
pretty thick
Thank you.
brush.
Council Toronto?
Yeah, I just want to mention, with the Open Space and Field Committee, I know we have the pickleball that we're looking at. I know there's a skateboard park that supposedly is on the agenda coming up. We're working on the trails in Valley. So we've got quite a bit, Granted, I'd like to put this on the list, but I'd also like to get a few things off the list. So I'm for it. I just like to see us kind of get through the pickleball and get us through the trails and then move to the next thing. So
Okay.
that's just my
Mrs.
thought.
Sanos?
Mr. President?
Yes.
Thank you. What would you envision to go forward with this?
I don't know, I'd leave that up to the Open Space and Fields Committee.
I think we
just
could
an idea.
follow a similar process to the Valley Trails if we could flag a trail through the brush, then we can make a decision. I think what Paul was hinting at, we could you don't necessarily have to build lush grass trails through there. You could build a trail more like Albro Woods where, it's more of a rustic trail. We have the other kind of trail in there, but I think there's ways to expand the trail network without a significant investment.
Yeah.
Or if we get the grant money, you know, a way to improve them, you know, more significantly. If you look at the green trail, like if you walk from the Glen down towards Brayman's Lane, you know, it's a path. It's not a, you know, I think there's opportunities, and like the
I think we
council.
could certainly consult Mrs. Von Villis's grandson, because he did a fantastic job over with the cemetery. If you could consult him.
He's in
and see-
Boston.
That's okay, he's not far. That would be great. Mrs. Flynn?
Actually, you took that thought right out of my head. I thought this would make a great Eagle project.
Yeah.
They can flatten down a trail right through, you know, where it's good to walk, and it'd be at least a start.
Yeah, maybe trails like up in Satyrus Point or something. I mean, who knows?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know, so.
Again, I think it can start as simple as if we flag it, approve that we like the way the trails are laid out.
Yep.
You know, there is an opportunity for volunteers to, you know, go from flag to clear it out, so.
Yep, okay. Huh? We could. We could. I volunteer you. Okay, so is there, do you want to forward this to Open Space and Fields?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, we good with that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Do we need a vote on that, or no? No, okay. All right, thank you. Let's move on to number 19, Town Administrator. Number 19 is Memorandum of Finance Director in reference to Fire Department surplus as a jet ski.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
I have a motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
And let's just move to number 20, which is a resolution of the council in reference to Fire Department surplus jet ski.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second?
Motion is second. This thing is currently at a facility to be repaired. It was looked at as a blown motor.
See ya.
They're gonna sell it for us, a surplus it for us, instead of bringing it back. So, any further discussion?
Yes.
Mrs. Sanos?
Who's going to sell it?
The company that has it there now will,
We'd have to pay a couple $1,000s to even figure out what's wrong with the motor. It's shot.
Yep.
They're not mechanically inclined then?
no.
It's old anyway.
It's old?
It's 2008.
This is the right move.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
So, any further discussion?
Can I talk to Billy?
You can talk to him all you want.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so number 21, Memorandum of Finance Director in reference to School Department surplus property.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
A motion is second to receive. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Let's move right into 22. Resolution of the council in reference to school department surplus property.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second?
Have a motion is second. Any discussion? No. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Number 23, memorandum of town administrator in reference to Middletown fees for services.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
A motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sean?
Just one second, just getting to it. This is for,
I am going to talk to him, you know that.
I wasn't at the last meeting. So, I guess at the last meeting, there was a discussion from the council regarding the fees that the town charges. I think what I was pointing out is that we do publish the revenue manual each year. That includes all of the fees that are charged by the town and school department. And when you look at it, it provides not only the revenue, but a description of it, the legal authorization. Many of the fees are, you don't actually get to set. They're set by state statute. It describes the rate, comments about it, forecast assumptions, and provides a history of what's been collected. So, again, not having been at the last meeting, my recommendation was that we add additional fields to the format when we go into the 2023 budget cycle that would highlight whether or not, when the fee was last updated, and look at it from that perspective. I don't know from your discussion if you want to enter into some sort of engagement where we're calculating all of the town's fees that we do have control over.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn that over to Council Toronto because I believe, Dennis, you were the one that was discussing this.
Yeah, and again, I think what we kind of stemmed this on, we were talking about fees. We at one point were looking at the campground, and it was a while since that was upgraded or updated. I think we were looking at the, the police detail. We heard that was something that, maybe hadn't changed in a few years. I remember seeing, and I don't recall, I couldn't find a copy of it, was a list of all the fees that we charged for different services. So I thought we would tonight might get a list of all the charges, special use permits, different fees, to see what they are and what we're charging. And then I'm sure that all adds up to a number that goes into the general fund. So I was thinking that we're going to drill down a level to actually look at the fees that we do charge and kind of just maybe, oh, that's changed last year, that's been updated, or state regulates that fee. Just have a list of the fees that we charge and where we're at, in regards to comparison maybe to other communities and what they're charging. That was kind of what I was trying to get to the bottom of.
Okay. Sean, what triggers a recommendation from you to the council that says, hey, we're looking at this fee and my recommendation is this? How does that process work from your perspective?
Yeah, so we generate the revenue manual each year. So you've gotten that with your budgets for a number of years now. It's a 400-page document. And, that's basically the basis for the budget itself. We sit with all of the department heads and look at the revenue streams. There's typically a discussion about whether or not we can advance the fees. And we rely on the department head to identify those for us.
Okay.
And that's generally what comes forward. There's fees that we're fighting with the state about annually, the building fees. Luckily the state's lazy, but they've prescribed one fee. We've challenged that with the building commission, and they haven't heard our appeal. But there's an example where we believe that the cost of providing the service is greater than what the state will authorize.
That's an accurate description, by the way.
I believe it is.
Okay.
So that's where we internally annually review that revenue cycle.
I just didn't know if something came up and then we looked at it, and because do you look at every single one every year, or?
If you go into your revenue manual, we update that every year. So one of the tasks is, to look at, you update the current year, and is there 2 years of forecast, Mark? Yeah, so we look at the current year and the forecast for the upcoming 2 years.
Okay.
So I think we can go through that. When we start that process again, we can add the additional information you're looking at.
Yeah.
And maybe when we have the revenue conference in this upcoming year, since we'll have those dates in there, which I think is really what you're looking for, is, are we delinquent in reviewing this? That would, I think, highlight.
Okay. I think what triggered it was during the budget season, the $25 for the detail vehicle hadn't been updated since 2008. And, of course, those costs get passed on, but, is that kind of what triggered it? Does that seem right? Doesn't it seem right? To me, it seemed like it probably needed to be updated, but that's just my opinion. $25 per hour 12 years ago is a lot different than, or 13 years ago, than $25 per hour now. But that's just my opinion. So I think that's kind of what triggered that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. President?
Mrs. Santos.
With that being said, and fees go up automatically each year, for instance, the campground, would it be possible to visit the campground and be ready for next year and what they're asking for next year, what they need for next year?
Yep, so this morning, actually, I met with Will Cronin. So we did conduct a written survey. We have that was done in July. And he is scheduling a meeting sometime either a week from now or 2 weeks from now with the campground. It will be an administrators meeting, so I'll do it. It'll be a hybrid meeting on Zoom, so we'll be at the fire station, and it'll also allow people to dial in. But the meeting that you're suggesting is in the works right now before they leave for the season.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Dennis, does that satisfy what you're looking for, or are you looking for a fee, what we charge fees for? Because we have that.
It's generally
in a
chapter
manual.
36 of the, it's codified.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen those fees, and it just, like I said, with the campground, and this is just an example of what we was charging a fee for a period of time, then we found out we kind of fell off of it, and that we then started increasing the fee because it was appropriate. We were undervaluing the campground. And then, again, the fee for the services for the car was another one that popped up a little bit. And I was just saying, maybe there's another opportunity to generate revenue if maybe there are a few of these other ones that maybe slipped through the crack or just hadn't been addressed. So I was just raising it as a question. If Sean feels comfortable, he's all over it, I'm good to go.
Okay.
So maybe one thing I'll do, if I can just, I'm working a little slow, not this meeting, the meeting after, I'll work with Mark to, because I think more of the fees are prescribed by state statute than by town ordinance. I will identify the ones that are under your control, at least forward that list to you and see if I can find a date when they were updated last. Because I think that's at least a data point that you're looking for to figure out, what the extent of the review is. And then, like I said, we would continue to work towards the revenue manual, revenue conference at the beginning of the budget cycle.
Okay. Because that's not far away.
No, it's not. And the one thing I think Wendy shared with me is we'd have a little time to prepare something. And I just was trying to, if we were going to take on some additional work, try to do it in conjunction with the work that we already have ongoing.
Sure. That makes sense.
So I'll get that list back to you on what I believe the town fees that you actually control.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Flynn.
on that note, could I request, Sean, that you also, in the revenue manual, you're going to add that column for when the fees were changed last? If you could maybe asterisk those that we either do or don't have control over, so that when we're looking at it, we'll know that, we have no control over that. And it will be highlighted on that same page, which ones we can actually act on.
So that's already there in the legal authorization. It'll list the Rhode Island statute that governs it.
Okay,
So I believe that's already accurate.
on that same page. Okay, great.
Yep.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Everybody satisfied on that? Mrs. Santos?
Being involved with the increase down at the campground, and I know that they had to move out for the weather that we had a week ago. Can we sort of, I don't know how the council feels about this, but give them a few extra days because they had to move out of there and they weren't in the campground? Is that possible?
They got 3 days in the beginning.
I'm not sure that's on the docket.
Okay.
If you want
bypass-
to
no,
make that, or
no,
talk to Sean offline about that,
No, I just a thought.
Okay.
Just bypass it,
okay.
forget it.
Okay. So, number 24, memorandum of town engineer in reference to recommendation of award of contract, PAR Corporation Boulevard Safety Evaluation, West Main Road to K Boulevard.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
And let's just move into number 25, which is a resolution for discussion. Resolution of the council in reference to award a contract, Park Corporation Boulevard Safety Evaluation, West Main Road to K Boulevard.
Motion to pass said resolution.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second discussion.
Convers-
Council Logan, this is something that you initially had brought up for the town to look at
Previous, with High Street.
with High Street, and then they decided to take more of a holistic look in that area. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, or,
Oh, no, more safety studies, the better.
okay.
It's something that
Okay,
the
Mrs.
residents
Flynn.
are.
Yes. So I noticed on page 2 of the proposal, at the bottom, the fourth bullet reads, upon completion of the study, it is anticipated that PAIR will make 2 presentations, one to the public and one to the town council, to discuss its findings. And it seems after the recent Paradise neighborhood experience that neighborhood input would be part of the data collection before completion. But the contract only describes collaboration with the police and town departments and RIDOT. Now, we did get 2 emails from residents already, which I applaud and encourage. But is there any way to embrace the neighbors sooner?
So I think the problem I'm having right now is the scope creep, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but we originally started this off in the area of my Antinomi and, not Boulevard,
High Street.
High Street got added, so that's the first creep of the scope, and this is the next one. So the goal is to get out and talk to the residents. It's just that we continue to add work to the engineers, at least with the preliminary review. So that's what we're sort of managing.
Yeah, I mean, based on what happened at Paradise Avenue, I think I wouldn't want to see anything until we had the input from the residents. Let them do their safety, let them make the presentation.
No, that was very clear how we need to change.
Yeah, that's all.
Yep.
It just wasn't in the contract, so I wanted to bring it up and make sure that Pear knew the expectations and how we think that it's most efficient and effective to get to the bottom line, that's all.
Excellent, okay. Any further discussion?
No, I think this is a good addition, because it really ties that cut through from West Main Road down. It cleans up that entire area, so.
Yep, okay, Mrs. Santos.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'd like to thank Warren Hall for the Turner's Road project with the 2 bumps that we've got there. Are they being painted this week, maybe?
Absolutely. You on
Thank
that
you.
paint.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the council, I'll be happy to answer that question. So the contractor was out last week. He did some preliminary layout on the striping and the pavement markings, the sharrows for the bike lanes also. So all that is maybe happening as early as the end of this week or sometime next week. So I'm waiting for a firm schedule from the contractor on that. But
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So Warren, and I talked to Sean about this, and obviously you work for Sean, not directly for the council. We can't tell you what to do by charter, but I gotta tell you, something like that can never happen again. I mean, motorcycles at night, cars, I mean, I hit it, and I'm like, I didn't even realize, and so we all got a couple complaints about that. I just don't know how they walk away from that and not, what is the thought process? I know you can't speak for them, but what is the thought process that goes through? We're gonna put this new improvement with no markings or highlights, letting people know.
Absolutely. We
I
try
have
not
a-
to let that happen.
I mean, I think
that's
that
for
creates a
sure.
liability for the town.
I have a recommendation for that, Mr. President. You abate the speed limit. You don't-
Even if you're going the speed limit.
Want you.
What'd
If you're going the speed limit, if you don't know it's there, it's a surprise.
I know.
So, and who does that?
Did its job.
What, the speed limit?
Yeah, I've
I
seen you
do.
drive. Okay. Just kidding.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
Okay, Warren, thank you.
Thank you, Warren.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank
The
you.
neighbors appreciate
He's
it.
already sitting down.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second to pass that resolution. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Number 26, memorandum of town engineer in reference to recommendation of award of contract Fuss and O'Neill, Maidford River and floodplain restoration work plan Phase 2, river restoration design amendment number 1, intersection improvements at Berkeley Avenue and Greenan Avenue.
Motion received said memorandum.
Second?
I have a motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's move right to the resolution, and we'll have discussion there. Number 27, resolution of the council in reference to water contract, Fuss and O'Neill, Maidford River and floodplain restoration work plan, Phase 2, river restoration design amendment number 1, intersection improvements at Berkeley Avenue and Green Inn Avenue.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second?
Motion is second to pass the resolution. Discussion. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. This is a recommendation to Fuss and O'Neill for the intersection at Berkeley and Green End Paradise Avenue. It would be tied into the Mayford River Restoration Project that we're looking at with road raising, stormwater improvements, floodplain improvements. This would tie into it. Fuss and O'Neill is designer on the Mayford River Restoration Project. So it makes sense just to keep that continuity between the consultant. Fuss is familiar with the area, and they have a detailed scope in here. I'd be happy to go through the scope. It brings the plans up to 30% design level, which is just prior to permitting. It includes public input. It includes council input. I think that's it.
So Warren, they're talking about a roundabout?
Yes, what the alternative is a roundabout.
So wouldn't we want to have public input first before we go and spend $49,000, have a 30% design plan, and maybe say no?
That's an option. But there is, included in the proposal is also to look at other alternatives for the intersection too. A four-way stop, leave it as is.
Lights.
So there's the other alternatives that FUS will look at and then make their recommendation back to the council.
Yeah, I would like to see what the residents, I'd like to see that the residents dictate what they not to see, that like to see their potential, and then go to FUS and say, okay, you know, what does this look like? Instead of spending 50 grand, and then we say, no, you know what, let's just leave it alone. That's just my opinion. I mean, I don't know if any councils have any, Dennis?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Sean, didn't we have a safety study going on that road, in that area? Because I chatted with you about a couple residents that were looking to put a crosswalk in there, and I know we're doing a little bit of work on that.
That's where all of this comes from.
Right.
Not only was there that discussion, but Warren met with the neighbor, who's an engineer, who had suggested, you know, roundabout as a solution. So, we've had that preliminary discussion, and
Yeah.
again, this action item came from, you know, really correspondence that the council was receiving, and it appeared to have a favorable, you know, that this was the direction that we wanted to head. We can certainly schedule a public hearing.
I mean, that was great, that one person, he was an engineer. You know, but there's people that live there their whole lives. We need to hear from those folks as well, and see what they, you know, they might just say, hey, you know what, leave it alone, or yes, let's see what a roundabout would look like, or no, it's a lot cheaper to put 4 poles in the ground and pass an ordinance saying, you know, make it a 4-way, or whatever. I don't know. I'm, you know, we're gonna do what the residents want us to do, basically, and as long as it makes sense. And then I think we go to the engineer instead of spending the money and saying, and then trying to get the input and maybe not move forward with anything. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I agree.
Mr. Welch?
I'd just like to say that I understand where you're coming from. However, there's also value to doing it Warren's way, because if it's much easier if I'm sitting there listening to the options, and you could say, well, we could just put in a 4-way stop, or we have to narrow the road because it's too wide, or, and that costs $10, and then if we could do the roundabout, it'd take up this much room, take this long, cost $20. You know, that helps you make a decision.
I understand that, but I'm not sure. I'm not an engineer, and I think I know what the options are. I mean, it's either leave it alone, a 4-way stop, or a roundabout. So before no traffic light.
That's in there.
Well, that's silly. That's an historic road over there. Historic laneway is paradise, and there's no traffic lights on a historic laneway, so.
That could be our first traffic light.
Huh?
Just like we have one-way road in town.
There you go.
So,
There you go. So anyway, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not willing to spend $50,000 until I hear from the residents. It's their money. So I'd rather hear from them, and you know, it's not $7,000 or $8,000, it's $50,000. That's just my opinion, and we'll have to see what the council wants to do. If it takes a vote, we'll vote, and whatever way it goes, it goes.
Can I ask
Counsel?
one more question?
Yes, sir.
So what I want to know is, part of this $50,000
Yes.
also includes traffic, accident, all that kind of.
We should have all that information already.
Right.
We already had a study done on that road, so we should have that information already. See all the big 12-foot signs that went up?
I try not to, but they're. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Logan.
I think it was clear that the residents wanted something done. They don't know what it is. We don't know what it is. The engineer can make some good recommendations. I think if we go to a public forum, we're gonna get a lot of opinion and maybe no fact.
That's right.
So it may be worth spending the money in this case to satisfy that resident's complaint or that need that they have down there, so that we get the proper recommendations and not go on a wild goose chase.
Okay, so 50 grand, he's gonna tell us the same thing I'm telling you tonight. It's a
You
roundabout.
may have some options.
It's a
for
round-
your
Not
historic
an
road.
expert.
I've been on here long enough, you might consider me one. It's a roundabout, it's a four-way stop sign, or it's do nothing. What else is there? So if you want to spend the 50 grand, then vote on it. I don't until I hear from the residents. That's just my opinion. So I'll do whatever you guys want to do, but let's move forward one way or another, okay? Mrs.
Mr.
Flynn.
President, if you don't mind. So when I glanced at this, going through the docket, I saw Maidford River Restoration Project, and I know that, you know, when I tie those words together, what comes to my mind is that whole project's being paid for by grants. So I didn't know if this was something that could be tied to something that is part of that project that is going to be grant paid and glean some of that additional information. There's no question that there's a safety issue. I think that we've heard that. We probably have that data. But is some of this part of what could be grant funded or partially grant funded at all? Because they're already doing work down there.
So the engineering we would have to pay for, but I think we would add this to the overall project, and that would be part of our efforts to seek grant funding for the entire area. So part of what Dean would look for is integrating the roundabout into the overall stormwater project that runs through the area. And there would be stormwater improvements associated with whatever design is ultimately adopted by the community. So,
Because we started a project on the corner there to narrow that pavement, and it's been left open for months and months and months.
Striping is next week, end of this week, early next week.
No, I'm talking about the pavement, the pavement that's cut out on the corner of Paradise and Green End. So, and again, the reason it's being tied to it is because there could be some road raising going on the Berkeley side, and that's gonna cause an issue with if there is a roundabout, and I think that's probably why they wanna, that will go forward, the town wants to move forward with a roundabout, but I still think we listen to what the residents have to say. And we never voted on whether that road was gonna be raised or not.
And to your point, you know, to do it independently without all that other knowledge could be a big mistake.
Ooh. I'm counting votes in my head. They're going down.
That's okay. That's okay.
And maybe we do something temporary like we've done before, you know, signs.
I just think $50,000 is a lot of money when there's another projects tying into it that we don't know whether we're gonna move forward with it or not. And
Or
that's
what
a
the
road
impact-
raising on the Berkeley Avenue side of that intersection, so.
True.
How do you wanna proceed?
Suggestion? I
Yes,
wonder
ma'am.
if Mr. Hall maybe could come up with some easy temporary safety activities for that intersection while the whole area is still plodding along with the restoration project?
So we've already
No.
done a safety review through there.
Yep.
From the Green End Avenue side as well as the Paradise Avenue side. So I think
So I think that's probably stalled because of the other project, would be my guess. And the unknown with the Maidford River, because it's tying right into this. With the potential road raising and everything, you're not gonna put something in there and then change the other.
well, there's the small changes, like you said, where they've removed some of the pavement and things like that. So, I mean, I think from a safety standpoint, those are the changes that we've adopted and have not been fully implemented. So just addressing the safety piece.
Okay.
May I?
Mrs. Sanos.
I think one of the worst section is if you're headed north from Paradise going to Berkeley. Vehicles come down Greenan Avenue, headed toward the east, or they cut into Paradise Avenue. There's no stop sign, so there could be a very serious accident when they come down Greenan Avenue and turn into Paradise. There's no stop sign. They don't care. They go at terrific speeds. I got caught in that situation last week with Mrs. Ardito. And because coming down Greenan Avenue, it's more or less blocked, and the road is so open that you really can't see a vehicle coming down Green End headed east because it's so open, and that's something has to be done there before there's a very serious accident.
That's what all this is for.
It could be done, just close the area more. Just close Paradise Avenue more.
With what? Cones?
No, a grass like they did on Paradise Avenue, eliminated the parking on that side where the pump was. They put all grass in there to avoid people using that for parking to go to the beach. They did the same thing, correct me, Mrs. Flynn, on going on to Tuckerman Avenue from Purgatory. They closed that, didn't they? Why can't they do the same thing?
That's what we're trying to figure out, what the best thing to do is. Just
Okay.
vote yes.
Suggestion?
Yes, ma'am.
Would it be wrong or illegal to paint each road, there's 4 of them, with a crosswalk, so that people see this white crosswalk? It indicates there are pedestrians, and that may slow people down also.
What 4 roads? There's only 3. You got Berkeley, Paradise, and Green End.
Yeah, well, there's
Four
it's a
sides.
4-way stop.
Oh,
though. There's
4 sides,
yeah,
okay.
so there's 4 roads that, to be painted, at least to start highlighting the area as, watch out, caution, pay attention.
I think that's more dangerous, just my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean,
Well,
I'm not
there's
the
a
traffic
tremendous
person.
amount of liability
Yeah.
with crosswalks, so I would, without an engineer's stamp and it properly being designed, I
Okay,
would.
so let's vote on it, okay?
Can I
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I believe in asking the public what they think. This is not a negative thing about that. But on the other hand, just look at us. 7 people and we have different opinions. Who's to say what is the best opinion and which of those opinions is actually based on good information? Personally, when we're talking about a town, we're talking about an entire area of a town. It would seem to me that we would want to get expert information and then present it to the public. And if they don't like it, then you go back and you make an adjustment. But you don't make a decision based on, I don't like this, or I don't like the way it looks, or my experience is this. You get good information and you make an educated decision, and then you ask the public for input with it, and if you need to make an adjustment, you do. But you're starting at the right place. You're not coming in from, I think this or that or whatever. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion.
That's okay, I respect that, but we have a lot of information already from, we've already done a study there. So the reason this is coming forward, in my opinion, is because of, the town wants to tie it into the Berkeley, the Maidford River project, because that road elevation could change there. That's why this is coming forward. We have accident data. We've studied that road already. I don't know why we're gonna pay, and I get it. It's just a lot of money for me when we have all this information already, and we kind of know what our options are. So, I get what you're saying, but we have the information. It's not like we don't have any information. It's just because the Maidford River, that project which we haven't voted on, is gonna be tied into this potentially if that road is raised.
Well, then
So
isn't it important to consider that?
We haven't voted on whether we want to move forward with that.
No, but what I'm saying is, are we going to make a decision without knowing that?
No, but we need to figure out whether we're going to raise the road or not.
Well, doesn't, what you just said, doesn't it depend on this other project if in fact that takes place? I don't
Yes,
know, I'm not an engineer.
Yes, no, you're an excellent English teacher, so you're correct, but we still haven't made the decision on the other side of this. So what if we move forward with spending 50,000, and then we say, no, we're not gonna raise the road over there? That's silly, because we're moving the river potentially anyway in that section where the road needs to be raised.
So when are we
And then
gonna-
Tom made up some good, came up with some good points of, let's look up the river further, maybe there's issues we could solve up there as well. So this just, to me, there's just still a lot of unknowns before we take this $50,000 leap. That's all.
I'd like to hear from the administration on what's been discussed up here.
So there's one point that Fuss and O'Neill knows right now, and it's in their proposal, is that the culvert at Green End Avenue will be unaffected by the road raising. The culvert that crosses underneath where the Mayford goes under the road, that elevation is gonna stay the same. So that culvert has basically become our orifice or our control for the amount of flow that goes downstream of the Mayford from this potential project, the Mayford River Restoration Project, so we don't impact any of the downstream flows, culverts, private properties, so on and so forth. So the culvert's gonna stay where it is. The elevation of that intersection, I don't know how much it will change, how much it can change without affecting that culvert. I don't see it changing a whole bunch. I think one way or the other, the Mayford River Restoration, the road raising that's part of that project is gonna blend back into what you almost see out there today. I don't see a whole bunch of road grade change.
Okay,
No.
okay.
And the
Because
date.
that's what it made it, at least to what I read, that's what it made it seem like, what was being presented.
No, not for this traffic study, no. So they're also gonna collect the data from Middletown Police Department, they're gonna collect, whatever
We have all
available
that data,
information.
Warren.
They're gonna
We-
grab all that. They've
But
gotta
we're
put-
paying them to do that.
They have
We
to-
already have it.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, whatever, I mean, that just annoys me that we're gonna go give people money to the data we already have.
Do we have the same, or is it old? Is it
We
come
just
from
had
a
it done.
different perspective? I don't know, I'm asking, I have no idea.
Well, Mr. President?
Yes.
We want to answer her question first.
So the data that's gathered for the traffic calming measures is what we're gonna call maybe a low-impact kind of data, where they'll look at the police reports, they'll look at the accidents, the crashes, and they use that data to come up with what we call low-impact measures. So whether it's striping, stop signs, signage, it's affordable, speed tables, speed feedback signs, things like that. This is an actual intersection where they want to know, by doing this improvement, are they going to back traffic up on one leg? Is it going to have a negative impact on Paradise as you're coming up to that intersection or going through the intersection?
So
this data.
Excuse me, so it's more than collection of data, it's a matter of analysis of data.
That's it, yes. Yes. So the data is used a little differently for these types, for an intersection design, four-way intersection design, than it is for a traffic calming project.
Okay, Council Toronto.
So as we just heard, initially, this kind of got started because folks were concerned about the safety of the road, not the Phase 2 river restoration. So we're mixing two things here. We're mixing in the restoration and the safety study that we did. The purpose of doing this intersection is for the safety,
Correct.
right? So I'm having a hard time understanding why we want to put why this goes into the phase for the restoration, when you're also saying that this is going to be the point of probably the height, that we're not going to raise this anymore. So why wouldn't we want to have a public workshop or a notification to inform the people what we found about the safety in the area and all the data we already have, the low-impact data, the low-impact measures. We haven't had a meeting with the public to discuss that, our findings. So I'm just, why aren't we sharing that with the public and then saying the next phase to this may be to look at a roundabout or a four-way stop sign or leaving it the way it is? What's your thought on that? So here's what we've seen, low-impact data. This is the low-impact measures we can do right now, or we're going to elevate it one more notch and we got roundabout, stoplight, whatever it is, and let them throw that out there, and let's see what we get. And if we get, then we may have to go with this measure. But I think, I would like to share the low-impact data, just show them all the studies, the safety that we've got out there, some ideas of the area, and then they may say, that's more than enough. Let's see how that works before we start putting a roundabout in here. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay,
Mr. President?
yes, ma'am.
Did we get any quotes from any other companies to look at this area?
Did not.
You know, Pear is doing the Boulevard area for $7,250. I wonder if we might want to see if they, I mean, I'm not sure if we can do this legally, but, I mean, 7,000 for a roadway safety study recommendations versus 49,000?
It's not apples and apples.
So how did we come up with Fuss and O'Neill?
So Fuss is the designer for the Mayford River project. So they're involved in the road raising, the elevation.
But you just said that has nothing to do with this.
Well,
But we're tying the projects together. So, why?
Why?
Because,
Road safety has nothing to do with river restoration, right? So why would we tie them together?
so you had a resident come in and there was a discussion about making changes. And from where we're doing engineering right now, the two are joined. There's also the possibility, if we join the project, of getting money for the construction if we tie them together. If we pull them apart, then we have two separate projects, and you don't have that linkage to necessarily get funding for the construction. We're reacting to the feedback you got from a resident regarding that intersection, safety concerns, and we've brought a solution forward. If we want to meet with the neighborhood first, I think that's fine. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not arguing against it. So we've just brought up what I thought the council was looking for was someone to come in, design a solution, and I do believe the intersection is part of the work we're looking at along the Mayford River in that vicinity. So, whatever the council's pleasure
Yeah, I
is.
mean,
And
I think to
I,
Terry's point, I mean, 50 grand to look at this when they're looking at other improvements and I know they're low impact improvements, but it's the data, and we have that data. So they're gonna analyze the data, they're not gonna collect it. They're gonna collect what we already collected, what we already paid somebody else to collect. And so they're gonna take and analyze it and send it to me. I'll gladly analyze it for free. Anyway, Mr. Welch.
So, Paul said this a couple of times, we already have the data, but I'm looking at task number 2.
What page you on?
I don't know, there's no numbers.
Okay,
Task number 2, it's in the beginning.
okay.
Data collection, traffic analysis, deliverables. So Warren, on that page, of all those bullets, do we have all that information from previous work?
I don't think we do.
I don't know, because I wasn't here, but
I don't know.
what's in there is analysis and the next step up, so.
Well, we
I don't
just
think
had it
it's fair
done
to
not
say.
that long ago. Can't we look and see what we had done? I mean, we should know what we have done, right?
I don't think we have it to this extent. AM and peak hour turning movements, count during weekday, study intersections, heavy vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians. I want to say no, we don't, but I'll come back with better information.
Well, I can tell you, if they're gonna collect that data now, we're going into a slower season. I'm not sure that's the right time to collect it.
48-hour automatic traffic recorder. We didn't
so
do that.
I think if you want to have the meeting, we can certainly support that. It doesn't cost $50,000. I don't think we want to continue to argue. I don't,
I think it's
again,
good
I think.
dialogue, but we need to make a decision. You know, so what do you guys wanna do? You wanna vote on it and move forward, or you just wanna have a meeting? What do you wanna do?
I'd like to see what Pear would charge us.
We can go meet with the residents and ask them. I think we already know the answer, though. I don't think we're gonna hear anything new out of those residents. They want it fixed. That's it, that's all they want. They don't care if it's a roundabout, a four-way stop, a traffic signal, a skywriter. They don't care. They want the problem solved. They think it's extremely dangerous.
To be honest with you, probably no one here that's traveled that road more than me.
I don't know, I go down there quite a
And
lot.
maybe Mr. Welch. I live there between Green End and Paradise and Prospect. So I'm going back and forth a few times a day. I think it works great.
I just drive by your house to see what you're doing.
Okay.
I think we already have a motion.
Mr. Toronto.
Again,
We do.
I agree that the residents want to it's a tough spot. We all know it. We live here. Come around that corner, you're waiting for that car to come down that hill, and if it's at night, it could be tough. So we're already starting to do some work over there, right? They're cutting the road a little bit on the sides, so we're already starting to do some improvements over there.
Yes, yes.
We as a town, this is just my opinion, have to get better at when we bring the public in and when we don't bring the public in. Because a lot of our meetings, we get to a point and we get people who come in and say, I haven't been notified, and so we have another meeting. And we've made the decision, well, we're not notifying them right away because we don't have enough detail. Then we get the detail, and they hear for it about the first time, they think we're already going to move on it. You guys are voting on that tonight. I know you are. No, we're not. Yes, you are. We need more time. I mean, it happens a lot. And I think, you know, from a marketing standpoint, I think we need to do a better job to get the word out. And maybe we have processes and procedures based on what we're doing. Like if we're doing a big change like this, we notify the public, you know, at a certain time, and maybe it's just notifying them that, you know, these are what's going on in writing or however it is. But I'm seeing here just on this that we've done a low-impact study of the area. We probably have some recommendations of some of the safety concerns and the things that we can do, which we haven't shared with the public yet. So, like Paradise, we got to a point where we had to wheel it back and have another meeting, and signs are covered up and things aren't happening. So we got to get a better process of where we start and where we end up, and we're not duplicating steps along the way. I don't have the answer to that, but in this scenario, I can't see it hurting to go in and have a meeting, talk about the study that we already did, what type of low-impact things we can do and high-impact things we can do, and then at the same time, I would recommend that maybe we say, you know, the next step to this could be a roundabout, could be a four-way stop sign, could be do nothing. And maybe we'll get some good feedback of what we can do there. And then if they say, we want to need a roundabout, or we'd like to see how much of these are going to cost and what the traffic study is, then we say, great, let's move forward with the $50,000 study. But if everyone is happy with the low-impact changes, then maybe we give that a shot, and we don't have to put a roundabout in there or four-way stop signs. And again, a four-way stop sign, the police department can go in and determine whether we put a four-way stop sign in. We don't have to go and do a huge study. I mean, the police department can do a study on that and determine whether there should be one there or not.
There's a process for that.
Right? There's a process for that. It has been done. It didn't cost $50,000 either. So I think that's kind of just let's take one more step. That would be my approach, to have a meeting, show the low impact, some of the measurements we can take in that area, see what the residents say, and if they're not happy with that and don't think it's going to resolve the problem, and we don't, then we elevate it one more step.
Okay, vote.
So I make a motion to do that.
We have a motion.
Oh, good.
We have a motion. We already have a motion to pass the said resolution, so we're going to vote on that. And if it fails, then you can make a motion. If it passes, then we move forward with it. So there's a motion to pass said resolution. All in favor? All opposed? All right. Okay. So, Council Toronto.
I make a motion that we schedule a meeting with the residents of Middletown to discuss the low-impact data and the low-impact measures that we can take at Berkeley, at Berkeley and Green End. Paradise.
Second.
Green End.
And Green End.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, to schedule a meeting with the residents to review the low-impact data that was collected from the previous road safety study on Paradise, Green End, and Berkeley.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Good dialogue. Number 28, memorandum of town administrator, reference to Salvatore Romano sculpture donation from Carol Cummings.
Didn't we, excuse me, didn't we
It's
get a
been
thing to
withdrawn.
pull that from the?
He's going to make that motion.
Okay.
Motion to withdraw this item.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, to withdraw this item. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 29, memorandum of finance director in reference to American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, update.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion, second, receive. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Mr. Tangway, our fabulous finance director.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Evening.
Evening.
Mr. President, members of the council, as part of the federal response to the pandemic, they've passed this American Rescue Plan Act. What that means to Middletown is $4.7 million. So we've come up with a plan to identify projects that the council and the public would like to do. This money will be received in 2 tranches, and we've already have received the first pot of money, 50%. We are recording that in a special revenue fund, and it's been placed in its own savings account. Part of the recommendations to the federal government for this money is to have public input. So we've put together a schedule for your approval. Hopefully, tonight you will approve the schedule. And it starts with tonight's meeting, bringing this proposal to you. We've based this on other federal grant programs to have public input. So there will be notices in the newspaper. There'll be conduct 2 public hearings. Then the public will have their chance to bring forward their proposals to the council, and you will forward those to the planning board. The planning board will make recommendations based on making sure they are compliant with the comprehensive plan. And then finally, you will make the decision of what projects will go forward. Part of this plan is we have to obligate the funds by December 2024, and we have to spend the money by December 2026. That is the plan in front of you, and we're asking for you to approve the plan.
Okay, so basically, Mark, we're going to receive this money.
Yes.
Between now and December 31st of 2024, we need to figure out what we're going to do with it.
Correct.
Okay, and it has to be spent by December of 2026.
That is
December 31st, December 26th of 2026.
Should be 31st, yeah.
Yeah, it says the 26th.
Yeah, it does. It's the 31st.
Okay. So it's the 31st of 2026?
Correct.
Okay. So Wendy, if that could just be reflective in the minutes, that would be fantastic. So, I mean, I have no problem with the schedule. I mean, I did read through it. It's somewhat restrictive, but I think we can come up with a lot of good uses for that. But I think, we have 4 years to do that. I think the sooner, and I don't want to rush, but I think the sooner we come up with a solid plan on what we want to do with it, the better.
Yes, we did want to bring it forward to start the process.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
it is involved.
So it's out there. I think that maybe we start talking to people, or we're going to have obviously public input, but, it doesn't hurt to start talking to folks and forming our own ideas and what we think, and, then we move forward, as long as everyone understands what the rules and what some of the restrictions are on that money.
Yes.
Okay.
And we will get it out through Matt Shealy. He'll get the word out.
Our public relation guy does a fabulous job of getting information out to people. It's like a well-oiled machine going on over here, Mark,
That's right.
That's right. So does any councilors have any questions? I do. Council Toronto.
Just, Mark, in regards to, I haven't had a chance to go, that's a
a lot
big
of
document, so, and I knew we were receiving it, and we'll spend time figuring out what this money can be spent on. But, just looking at it, it's the American Rescue Plan, and I think this was formed because of COVID
Yes.
and all the impacts that it's had. So I'm assuming that in here, it's reflecting things that may have affected the town in a negative way during COVID, and this money should be used to right the ship in regards to what's happened because of COVID. Is that fair to say?
It has to be tied into COVID, correct?
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Or investments in water, sewer,
There are certain-
or broad.
Right. So could something like this be used for a roundabout? No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, it can.
Just kidding.
Well, but Mark does this just as an example with like SRF money. Like, we can use SRF money to pave over a trench, but not the entire road. So if you were to put a sewer line in, it would pay for the sewer line, the pavement above the sewer line, but not the remainder of the road. And
But it would certainly cut down our costs if that was a road that needed repair anyway.
correct.
Yes.
But it is,
But this could help us with Bailey, Maidford River or projects of that such, right?
correct.
All right. Okay. What about like housing projects potentially where COVID has has caused evictions and a housing crisis somewhat.
There are
Is that
numerous.
stretching it, or?
No, there's examples of that. So just when you have a chance to look through the packet,
Yes.
there's a summary of what projects are eligible for on
Yep.
page 3.
Yep.
If you go on page 31 and 32, it's broken down a little bit
Yep.
further. There's the last category of spending, which I think is important. Mark is actually attending a conference seminar tomorrow, is that we are able to take a portion of this money out under out of a category of loss of revenue, and then bring it back into the general fund, which then could be reappropriated for a general purpose. Mark will get more details on how, and there's actually a formula for how that works. So that's sort of the last category of money. So there is a way to sort of free up money outside of this definition, and we'll have more information
Okay, so
on that.
Mark, when does this, I know you mentioned about some of the money already, but when does, and then the fund that would be put in, the restricted fund, so when does the town receive all the money? And a real silly question, are we able to invest that money in the meantime, based upon trying to figure out what we're gonna do with that money? Because like we would our own money, hey, I have this money, but, you know, I'm not just gonna keep it in my, under my pillow. I'm going to, and I would like to invest. Is that a part of a restriction on this money, or are we able to make money off this money?
You can make money off the money.
Make money on this.
No, you're talking
The
our
interest
language.
is spendable, however the council deems that they want to spend the interest on
Awesome.
the money.
Okay. Mrs. Von Villas.
I just have a question. Are we going to get recommendations from the administration in regard to potential programs? In other words, we're all sitting up here and everybody's got different ideas and different priorities and whatever. What I would like to see is a list of priorities at the administrative level, because that's management, okay? We are just the people that say yes or no. But I would like to see what management feels about it, based on knowledge.
Okay. So this doesn't count towards our percentage of our rainy day fund, right? You know how we're between 8 and 16%?
No, this
That
is,
doesn't, if we put that there, or we end up transferring it through there, it doesn't?
it's in a special revenue fund
Okay.
outside of the general fund, and it's
Okay.
restricted to a certain purpose, which would be this program.
Yeah, and I think
And,
that.
and I think
sorry.
and I sit down with Mark and Ron, because we do have a requirement to go out to the public to solicit ideas. That is a feature of this, and we've sort of modeled what we're doing after, like, the CDBG program, where you would have recommendations from the town, but you also up the opportunity where someone from outside of the town may have an idea for a program that might help people, through
I
COVID.
think the ideas ought to be all there, but what I want to see before we get to the decision-making process is I want to see what the administration/management feels about what's needed.
Yep.
Because they know better than we do.
Sure.
They're on the
Yeah,
front.
and I would, not only that, but I'd like to see it also tied into the priorities we set, if that's possible.
I have one more,
So,
Mr. President.
yes,
One more
Council Toronto.
This is a little bit off, but it just came up in regards to funds being available for renters and landlords. And there was an email circulating earlier this week. There's a program on the state level. Funds are available for renters and landlords. And there was a seminar that was being offered in Newport. I think it was tonight, maybe. Are we doing anything at I know we talked a little bit about, and Sean said we've already got the ball rolling. We did an announcement to the residents about this. But I think we should take a target on our landlords and maybe renters, somehow get the word out there, because there are sufficient funds out there to assist the residents of Middletown who are renting and the landlords. So, do you know how much money is available for that? Because it's pretty sizable dollars.
I don't, but it's being administered by Rhode Island Housing,
Yeah.
more or less, as they were the successful agency to basically apply for the money and administer the program.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And so, we doing anything to promote that within the town?
I don't know.
So
I think
we-
it's through Rhode Island Housing is what.
Rhode Island Housing is responsible for promoting it, and then Matt has put out we did an article on it in late July, and then after we received your email, we posted something additional on social
Yeah,
media.
based on some of the recent law changes, because some of that was extended.
Right.
The evictions and all that.
Right.
Maybe we can get an update on that.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
from Matt.
And there's a lot of
Back
funding
what's going
coming out of the state level. I just want to make sure that I'm sure you guys already know about it, but the residents understand what's there. And so that we're not creating something with this, and goes with Council Von Villas's, statement of you guys are close to you got your ear to the ground, we might say, hey, let's help out renters, and you're gonna be like, no, there's a whole nother fund for that. We don't need to do that over here, so I'm just kind of waving the flag.
Yep.
Thank you.
So what's the next step? I know there's a timeline. All you're looking for is just to approve this time. We don't even need to approve it, right? You're just showing us what the timeline is, correct? Or you're looking for approval on this timeline?
We would like you to approve it so that we,
Okay.
that way there's some teeth to it and people know, it legitimizes
Okay.
the advertisements and the notices that we
Okay.
put in the paper.
Okay.
So a motion to approve the timeline per the finance director.
Second?
Okay, motion is second to approve the timeline for the American Rescue Plan Act. We have a motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
It's
just,
exciting.
there is someone at the governor's office. If you have a question, forward it to me and I'll shoot it up there. If it's beyond the regulation and we
I'm
can
going
get
to see him
answers.
tomorrow, so if you have any questions, let me know. I'll ask him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a few.
Okay, write them down or
Right,
text me
you got it.
so I can pull out my phone and go, let me ask you this question. Okay. All right, so let's continue on. Number 30, communication of tax assessor in reference to cancellation of taxes for certain Middletown residents.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second?
A motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
And let's move right into the resolution. Number 31, continued from the meeting of, are they the same, Wendy, or are they different? Because one has a date, one doesn't.
One doesn't, because you had really received the memo the last time.
Okay.
You went on
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't,
but it didn't make any sense not to put the memo there.
okay. Number 31, continued from August 16, 2021, regular meeting resolution of the council in reference to cancellation of taxes for certain Middletown residents.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to pass discussion. Mrs. Sanos.
Thank you. Whether or not this will move forward with any action, I spoke to Mr. Brown about this, and his department is willing to do it. What I am going to talk about is abatements. I know that Mrs. Flynn wanted the abatement of the previous council meeting passed, but I wanted to use that, not knowing whether or not the tax assessor would have another abatement on the docket for today. What I'd like to bring up, now, everybody got in their docket the department activity data report from the fire department, police department, and even our town clerk. What I am going to say is abatements come before the council for approval. We cannot change the bottom line of the certified tax roll. There is a, Mark, please correct me wherever I'm wrong. There is a certain line item in the budget, in the revenue, which any abatement that is approved by the council is deducted from that. Am I correct in saying that?
No.
No. Okay, I didn't think so.
So what we talked about, and this is the way it's been done for a long time, is when we adopt the budget, so you have the tax roll, which will have a dollar amount, and then when we come over to the budget, we agree upon a collection rate. And that collection rate takes into account money that we don't collect and also money that's abated during the year. So it's not reflected on the financial statements, but it would be the difference between the levy and the budgeted current tax collections.
Why I bring this up, we do get the abatements, and they are approved by the council. What I'd like to see is, now some people call it the addendums or the supplemental that is collected throughout the year. Now, Mr. Reagan brought up a good example. Say in December 31st, you have a lot, and that's what you're taxed for. So come, say, February, you go before the building inspector's office and ask for a permit to build a home. After the home is built, the building inspector will release the permit, give it to the tax assessor, who will then go out and evaluate the property and provide the taxpayer with a bill called either addendum or supplemental that he has to pay. What I would like to see is, and I think Mr. Brown agreed with me, that have the council made aware of what the supplemental listing, just like the police, fire report, and I hope we get that every month. I'd like to see a supplemental that the tax assessor supplies each year.
Yep, so Teresa and I spoke this afternoon, and we already provide the council a tax collector's report. I want to say it's on a quarterly basis. And if you look at that schedule, we provide you a summary of the addenda bills that are issued. And what Teresa and I talked about is that we will provide you the detail of what that number is with the report. So it'll come with the collector's report. And before the meeting tonight, I sent you the detail that you would receive, which includes all of the addenda bills that were sent out for 2020, as well as the addenda bills that have been sent out this year to date. So George and Mark will make that change, and when you receive the next collector's report, you'll have that detail. And I think that's what Teresa was looking for.
The information's easily extractable?
It is. It's just a
Okay,
report out of,
excellent.
it's very easy, because we already printed out to create the summary number.
You just pull in the detail.
That's all we're doing.
Okay, excellent. Councilor Toronto.
So with the sale of a property, and I just don't know when this happens, say there's a sale of a property in the middle of the year, does that get, if it goes up a certain amount in regards to the sale price, it doesn't change until it's reassessed in the following year if there's a reassessment process?
It wouldn't change until it's reassessed. There's a specific state statute that says if I'm improving the property, and so the example of a vacant lot that I built a house on, and the trigger is when the CO is issued, so I can get a supplemental bill from the date of that CO going through the rest of the year.
So that's a major improvement.
Yeah, yeah, so, but, and it's something that, all the cities and towns do.
Okay, so if I make a major improvement, when I'm done and they come out and say, okay, it's ready to move into, then they can adjust my tax bill.
You get a
Yeah,
supplemental.
once the CO is issued.
You get a
That's when it's done.
Yeah.
So when we close it out here in town, say, okay.
Yeah,
you
so
get
for
the
example,
CO.
quite often, if I've got a client that's buying new construction, and we've got a tax bill, but the tax bill might reflect it being vacant land or only partially
Right.
constructed, the attorneys that are dealing with that are trying to, they'll call the tax office, is there gonna be a supplemental bill? What's the amount of that gonna be, so you can do the proper proration
Yeah,
for the
it's
rest of that
prorated.
year?
Right. But if someone's living in a home and they sell it for $500,000, even though
That
it
wouldn't have
doesn't-
any
That doesn't
impact.
trigger anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's still the same house that was assessed on December 31st, the assessment date.
Okay.
So the fact that it's sold wouldn't have any impact on the bill for that year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, people.
thank you. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to pass said resolution. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, boards and committees. Number 32, memorandum of Paul A. Croce, Chairman, Middletown Planning Board, in reference to request for appointment of a planning board member to the Middletown Affordable Housing Committee.
Motion to receive said memorandum and have the planning board appoint a member to the Middletown Affordable Housing Committee.
Second?
I have a motion and a second, and I had talked to Paul, and the reason is, as the body responsible for maintaining the Middletown Comp Plan and tracking its implementation, the board would like to put more of a focus on the Affordable Housing Action Plan containing the housing element of the comp plan. So I think, and I agreed with him, having a planning board member sitting on the Affordable Housing Committee will help facilitate collaborative effort by both committees in implementing the Affordable Housing Plan and meeting the town's housing needs, which I thought was a good idea, really did. So he put that forward, and I think it's a good thing. So we have a motion and a second to receive memorandum and have the planning board appoint a member to the Middletown Affordable Housing Committee.
Oh, question?
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
they going to actually appoint the member or nominate a member for appointment by the council? I'm not sure how that works.
I would just assume they're going to appoint the person.
I would think they would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine whoever they put forth, we're going to say no. I mean, so, you know,
Yeah, we can use all the help, on that committee.
we sure can.
Get some more help over there.
Excellent, excellent.
So, yeah, I'm all
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you, everyone. Good job.